I call to order the San Marcos City Council Work Session meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 19th. The time is 3 o'clock. Ms. Cordova, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye. Or here.
Mr. Gonzalez? Here. Ms. Garza?
She'll be
Mayor
right back.
Houston?
Here.
Mr. Scott? Mr. Mendoza?
Here.
Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez? We have a quorum present, Mayor.
Okay, and it is now time for citizen comments. City Council hears citizen comments at work sessions, workshops, and regular meetings. There is a sign-up process. Speakers may speak once during citizen comment time period and may not yield time to others. You have 3 minutes to speak. When you state your name, the timer is displayed on the screen. You start in the green. When you have 20 seconds left, you'll be in the yellow. When the timer's red, your time to speak is up and a bell will ring. The mayor and council will endeavor to ensure that meetings are conducted in a courteous manner and in an atmosphere free of defamation, intimidation, personal insults, profanity, or threats of violence. If you do any of those, you will hear the gavel, and I will ask you to leave the council chambers. This is your warning. We have 5 people signed up for the work session. Some are in person, some will be speaking online, I believe. I'm going to read all the names so folks can be lining up. We have Virginia Parker, followed by David Jones, then Michael Kammerlander, then Maxfield Baker, and then Jordan Moser. Are any of those folks here? They may have been signing up for 6 o'clock and click some extra times just to make sure. Okay, in that case, we will move on to
Mayor, I believe Mr. Jones.
Oh,
is
we
on.
do. We do have someone online. Okay, David Jones, it is now your turn.
All right. Hi. Thanks, Miss Mayor. Davis actually is my name.
Sorry.
And that's all right. No big deal. All right. So 2 quick things. One, I'll just start with, I've been promoting this idea of Project H2O, Headwaters to Opportunity, which I just want to kind of update you guys what I'm doing there. So I met with some folks from the Hayes Caldwell Economic Development team this morning. And basically what I'm seeing there is that they thought the idea was interesting. The idea basically is to focus on bringing water technology companies to San Marcos. And in my initial work with river advocates and members of the university, those constituencies both really like this idea because it brings a lot of sustainable jobs to San Marcos. It seems to me that for a sustainable tax base, we actually want the channel through which the taxes come in to us to be through people being employed in high wage jobs here, rather than, for example, property taxes on, for example, the data centers, because I imagine that that's vulnerable for reasons to those data centers going to the state and lobbying for ways to lower the tax rate that they pay to San Marcos. So the idea basically is to work to attract businesses that make things like smart water meters. They consult on water technologies and water use, cleaning systems, pumps. This is an explosive market. It's supposed to go from about 250 billion a year to 520 in just the next 3 years. And I think San Marcos is uniquely positioned to do well here. And some really important constituents groups really like it. So I've circulated that to Shane, to Mayor Houston, and to a number of other folks in the community. And I just wanted to bubble that up. And I'll use my last minute here to just share that my perspective with you guys is that y'all do a lot of work, the city council members. And I have a lot of empathy for the work you do. I think it's long hours. I think these meetings can be really long and there's a lot of documentation. You are expected to know and to be able to, discuss. And I just wanted to share with you the difference between basically using a tool like ChatGPT versus a tool like, there's a tool that Google offers called Notebook LM. It's a free tool. And the difference is that with Notebook LM, you can add, for example, like your briefing packets to that tool. And when you get responses back, you will only get responses back that discuss what's in that packet particularly. So like if you upload a packet for Arwa and you go and you ask it, what was the score of the UT game? It'll say, this doesn't say anything about the UT game. So I think that by using a tool that's called grounded AI like that, I think it could really help you do your job more efficiently and hopefully have, good mental health and just less stress because you guys are expected to do a lot. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else online?
Yes,
Okay.
Max.
Mr. Baker's turn.
Hello. Yes, this is Maxwell Baker. I have some work going on in my house, so you might hear some loud noises. Hopefully, this all comes through. But yeah, I wanted to just show up at the 3 p.m. and talk a little bit about the data center issue in front of you all this evening. I'm hoping that I'll be able to be here for the 6 p.m. and the subsequent public hearing items, but largely, I just want to impress on you that what I've heard from the community forum meeting, which I understand not all of you attended, that it was kind of not what the developer had promised to do, which was to, speak clearly about what restrictive covenants we could expect, and to have answers for community members. I also wasn't able to attend. I was out of town. And, when a developer comes as well-intentioned as Mr. Mayberry has painted himself to be, and yet still continues to fail seemingly to the benefit of the developer in answering and providing transparent questions or answers, I think that should give you pause. And at the very least, make you question whether we can expect them to stick to the restrictive covenants. I would advise you to closely consult with your legal staff regarding the power that the restrictive covenants we might enforce have. As I spoke with Mr. Mayberry, it's pretty clear that if they violated a restrictive covenant, first, how do you intend to document and verify that that has happened? And two, if they go to court, Texas being a very business-friendly state, are we actually willing to sue them? And do you actually think that an injunction or a lawsuit would actually benefit the residents of San Marcos? Lastly, in the big, beautiful bill that the Republicans pushed forward and that some of you maybe up on council supported, it keeps us from regulating AI data centers for up to 10 years. So do these restrictive covenants immediately run against a federal preemption when it comes to our ability to actually hold them to these restrictive covenants? Lastly, it looked like I still had time. Not sure why that happened.
Your time is up, Mr. Baker.
Well, I think it lagged.
I think he's got 20 seconds.
I didn't see it cut off, but I don't see it because they put it up I didn't see it.
Watching, could you tell? I'm trying to get the volume off on this thing, that's where I go.
Whenever you were clicking on that, it could stop that. It could stop the time. Whenever you click on,
Anything?
whenever you click on anything else, it could stop the time.
I was doing the function in the sound
It'll,
thing.
yeah.
Okay. Can we get
If it's
Mr. Baker
still-
back and let him have his 20 seconds?
Yes. I don't see him. He's not coming on. I don't see.
Is he not
Or
still
his
on?
comments on
Okay, tell you what, I'm going to give him 20 seconds some other time, and we will move on. So, next is presentations. Ms. Cordova, would you read item 1? Ms. Cordova, do you have item 1 ready? If
Yes,
not,
I
I
do.
can read it.
No, ma'am, I have it.
Okay.
Thank you. Receive a step presentation and hold discussion regarding the 2025-2026 fiscal year proposed budget and provide direction to staff.
Ms. Reyes.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, members of the community, and staff. Before I begin my introductory remarks on the proposed budget, I would like to take a moment to officially introduce two new members of our directors team. I'm thrilled to introduce Lindsay Cox as our new Director of Human Resources.
Glad you're here.
With more than a decade of human resources experience, Lindsay has hit the ground running to enhance our organizational culture and provide high-quality, community-focused services. I'm also excited to introduce Tiffany Williams, who has officially been named City of San Marcos City Marshal, taking over the role on August 11th after serving as interim marshal since October 2024. With nearly 18 years of service to our community, she brings experienced leadership and a strong commitment to keeping our parks, trails, and green spaces safe. I also want to acknowledge that today is the last council meeting for Director of Planning and Development Services, Amanda Hernandez.
That's for the good work you've done, not that you're leaving.
Thanks for the clarification. Amanda began her career with the City of San Marcos in 2012 as a senior planner and has demonstrated exceptional leadership, knowledge, and professionalism as she has advanced within the organization. Her expertise will be missed. We are thankful to have Andrea Villalobos step into the interim role as we recruit to fill this important position, and that is the end of my presentation. Just kidding. I was doing it in Amanda fashion, so that was an ode to her. So that was the end of that part of the presentation. Now I'm going to get and shift to our presentation on the fiscal year 2026 budget. This is not just a financial plan. It's a roadmap that turns your values and priorities into action for San Marcos. It represents months of collaboration, beginning with your visioning session in January, continuing through spring and summer workshops, and culminating in the proposal before you today. I want to thank Finance Director John Locke, Budget Manager Tricia Patek, and the Budget and Finance team, also Assistant Director of Finance Ismael Garcia, and all department directors and assistant directors. Their dedication ensured this budget reflects council's vision while remaining fiscally responsible. The $366.4 million budget includes $122.8 million for the general fund, which supports many services residents rely on every day: parks, libraries, roads, police, fire, and emergency management. It also advances several priorities: expanding human services funding to $750,000, an increase of $200,000 to strengthen support for nonprofits serving families, seniors, and our most vulnerable residents. Establishing a new Office of Community Support and Resource Navigation to develop proactive strategies to better connect residents with essential resources such as housing and food. Expanding tenant protections, including continued funding for legal and aid to help residents avoid eviction. Restructuring electric and water utility rates and expanding utility payment assistance programs. Paying cash for needed equipment and capital outlay purchases, including Fire Engine 7, which saves us money by not incurring debt and having to pay high interest rates. Sustaining investment in infrastructure, utilities, and quality of life programs that benefit every neighborhood. But the financial picture is increasingly bleak, and the city, like its residents, are feeling economic pressures. Costs are outpacing revenues. Sales tax is down from 2023, and property tax revenues are constrained by state legislation that caps that rate increase. Pending legislation would be even more detrimental and could force cuts of $34 million to $54 million unless voters approve new funding. At the same time, the housing market is stagnant. Existing home sales are flat, and mortgage interest rates remain high. While our population with the Texas State student body continue to grow, operational budgets are decreasing, and the demand for services is increasing. In short, the known pressures are mounting, while the unknowns, especially from the state and economy, threaten our future threaten to further reduce our ability to serve a growing community. That's why the choice before council today matters so deeply. You have three options. The no new revenue rate provides stability today, but creates large shortfalls starting in 2027. The long-term focused rate provides $1.9 million in additional capacity, enough to replace expiring federal funds, prepare for staffing Fire Engine 7, and reduce the shortfall in future years. A rate just below the voter approval rate provides the strongest buffer, though new state laws may soon restrict this flexibility for local governments. This may be the last year San Marcos can adjust its tax rate at a level to secure longer-term financial stability. The decisions you make today
It's a pleasant tune.
The decisions you make today will undoubtedly determine whether San Marcos can sustain essential services, protect our residents, and continue investing in the infrastructure and programs that define our community, or whether we face deep cuts that diminish our quality of life and weaken the promise that every San Marcos resident will remain where every family can build their future. This budget reflects both opportunity and responsibility. It acknowledges the sobering financial realities we face while calling us to act with fiscal prudence, balancing today's needs with tomorrow's stability. For residents, the stakes are clear. The ability to call 911 and know help will arrive quickly. Confidence that roads, sidewalks, and stormwater management systems will be maintained. The assurance that parks, libraries, and programs remain open and accessible, and the knowledge that San Marcos continues to be a place where families can thrive. Mayor and council, your leadership at this moment is incredibly important. By confronting the bleak outlook with discipline and foresight, we can ensure San Marcos remains strong, resilient, and prepared, not just for this year, but for the years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes, and thank you, Mayor and City Council. We'll begin the presentation of the fiscal year 2026 budget workshop with just going over the agenda of the items that we're going to discuss today. We'll begin with talking a little bit about the budget process and City Council's strategic goals. The budget policy statement update, the budget policy that City Council established back in March. We'll give you an update on where we're at with all of those items. Talk a little bit about benchmarking, provide an all funds update that includes some state legislative impacts that on some bills that have been submitted during the special session. And then we'll get into some general fund and talk specifically about some legislation that would impact the general fund directly, discuss some of the tax rate scenarios that Ms. Reyes just touched on, and also just go over what the proposed budget looks like for fiscal year 26. Then we'll get into all the other major operating funds and include the fund tables for those as well. So this is our budget calendar. We've worked our way through most of it. We've received the certified tax roll, and so now we have the tax rate information for fiscal year 26, and we'll cover, actually later this evening, City Council will set the maximum proposed tax rate for fiscal year 26, which establishes the ceiling for that tax rate. Following that, tomorrow actually we'll provide the Neighborhood Commission an update on what the fiscal year 26 budget looks like. And then there will be 2 days of 2 different council meetings of public hearings. On September 2nd, there'll be a public hearing on the budget, tax rate, and any kind of fee changes. And on that same day, there will be, the City Council will receive the CIP update, will be submitted to them for fiscal year 26. And then on September 16th, there'll be a second public hearing on the budget and the tax rate. And that is the day that City Council will set the actual tax rate for fiscal year 26 and adopt the budget. So these are City Council's 5 strategic goals. As the department heads were building their budgets for fiscal year '26, all of the programs and services and down to the expenditure should point back to City Council's strategic goal in some way in support of these 5 strategic goals. The next few slides just provide an update on the budget policy statement that City Council set in March that provided the guidelines for the city manager in building the fiscal year '26 budget. This first slide provides information about fund balance, and all of the different operating funds have met their fund balance target, except for electric that we'll discuss in a couple slides. Moving on to debt management, the one thing that I'd like to point out here is the stormwater fund, where for fiscal year '23 and fiscal year '24, the general fund covered all of the flood control projects. Due to the stagnant property tax growth and sales tax growth, the general fund could not continue to do that for fiscal year '25 and as well in fiscal year '26. So so the change made for fiscal year '25 and into '26 is to fund up to $5 million of the flood control projects with the stormwater fund, and then the general fund would fund anything over that $5 million threshold. There were multiple revenue targets that City Council made and guidelines that City Council set in preparing the revenue estimates for fiscal year '26, and all of the different targets that you see on this slide were met. Moving on to expenditures, all of the different expenditure targets were also met. I did want to point out the new program where City Council requested to increase the funding for the Human Services Advisory Board, a minimum of $50,000 to a maximum of $200,000, and $200,000 is included in the proposed budget, which increases the funding for HSAB to $750,000. Continuing with expenditures, there's one item I'd like to point out here as well, and that is on the general fund. There was an item to explore policies that would protect the city from sales tax revenue volatility. And included in the budget is an expansion of the sales tax shortfall contingency plan. And what this will do is the city will only operate on 98.5% of the estimated sales tax revenue. And that will provide some buffer against the sales tax volatility that the city has experienced over the past couple of years. Departments have had to halt planned purchases, which disrupts service delivery, to the community when departments have planned to make these purchases, and because we're not hitting sales tax targets, those purchases are put on pause. This will at least create a little buffer for us, in the event that sales tax don't hit target and continue to decrease. And I mentioned that all the funds, with the exception of the electric fund, met the fund balance target. The electric fund target was 150 days. It was close. It was 145 days. The electric fund will actually finish fiscal year '25 at target. It's just with the growth of the fund into fiscal year '26, that also increased the cash it needed on hand. So it just missed it by 5 days, but it is at 145 days. So these are the items that were not met in the budget policy statement. Beginning on the far left side, the expenditures that were paused at council direction to complete the staffing studies, those were the police and fire staffing plans. So there is nothing included in the fiscal year '26 budget for police or fire positions. In the center are expenditures that were unable to fund at the no new revenue tax rate. That included allocating a third of the cost of staffing Fire Engine 7. Ideally, this was, fiscal year '25 was supposed to be the first year that we set aside a third, and fiscal year '26 would have been the second of the 3 years that we set aside funding for the staffing for Engine 7. We weren't able to do that at the no new revenue tax rate, so that is not included in the fiscal year '26 budget. And also transitioning a quarter of the cost for the citywide software allocation to the general fund. We've discussed this at other budget workshops, and it's just the way that software that's used citywide is allocated across the different major funds. It's disproportionately allocated to the utility funds, and this has a direct impact on utility rates. The general fund should pay a higher share of that, and the plan is to transition a quarter of that cost a year over a course of 4 years, and that's $250,000 a year. The total amount is estimated to be $1 million that needs to move to the general fund. And on the far right-hand side is just expenditures that are on hold per council direction, and that's just in the Community Enhancement Fund. New intersection plantings and gateway monuments are on hold as staff is going to focus on existing plantings. And that will take us to benchmarking. And just as a reminder of how our peer cities were selected to provide these benchmarking information to council, they were guided by our consultants for the compensation study, and as well as the director's team helped work through those during the 2023 compensation study. We also met and agreed on these peer cities in preparation of the meet and confer agreements. And the peer cities consist of both local and regional cities within the city of San Marcos recruitment area and other like cities outside of our immediate area. It's important for us to have multiple points to compare all positions throughout the city too. So, for example, the city of San Marcos is one of few cities that has a municipally owned electric utility. So we have to have enough cities that also own a municipal electric utility to be able to compare those positions too. There's some of the factors that were considered include comparable size or demographics, a university community. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, when you're done.
Okay. We touched on a municipal-owned electric utility and also wastewater and airport, and also any city that we compete for with recruitment.
Thank you. So I know we've had discussions about what, kind of like how we land on these comparison peer cities. The other day, I came across another, I forgot what governmental entity, but they also were guided by their consultants and like their leadership. But their consultant provided like a blurb on each of the cities. So when you say demographics, it would say like the city of San Antonio's demographic, their socioeconomic status, right? So it's more of a narrative. And so I was wondering if our consultant provided that. Because I know we've had conversations about, while that information, like those target points is really helpful, it's also important to note like other like differences and similarities. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Did the consultant provide anything like that?
This would have been during our compensation study in 2022, 2023, so they're no longer working with us, but at the time, no, it was more conversational because the different directors were aware of their different counterparts in other cities and asked some questions. And so it was more of that dialogue of going back and forth in terms of naming which ones. The other thing is because they're also cities that are part of our meet and confer agreements, those are agreed to as part of that, and we've been very clear about making sure that everybody has the same peer comparators so that it's not different ones for different positions within the city. And so that is why we have had one set of cities that everybody gets compared to within the city. And so that has been what we've done in the past.
Yeah, I think in the future that would be helpful because, yeah, I feel like we've had conversations around the methodology on peer cities, I think since, I mean, for as long as I can remember, I've been in office since 2020, so maybe not that long, but it's helpful to be able to justify to our neighbors kind of the, you know,
Yeah.
who we're comparing ourselves
Sure,
to and
yeah,
why.
the rationale behind why each
And
city
it would
was.
be comparing, probably just capturing what people say, is somebody's gonna say, oh, that city is comparable because, and that conversation, so if some of that were captured and provided, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. I was just curious if that was already a thing, but.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes, ma'am. I didn't know, I thought questions were at the end, so thank you for
Well,
starting it.
It's usually best, but while we're talking about comparison, and we want to ask a question about comparison, I think it's probably okay to kind of get that figured out.
Sure, mine was a couple slides back, so I could either hold it. It was literally based off of a response, a question that you asked on the message board about slide 13, the increase to personnel.
Let's go back. I will say the ones that you can hold are good, and as you did, put the slide number down with your,
Yeah, this is
with
gonna
your
be quick.
comments.
So the question that the mayor asked was, the health insurance costs and so on and so forth. So I know right now we have a proposal of 3% for wage and health insurance increase for our personnel.
The,
Total costs.
yeah, for health insurance, it's 5%.
Okay, because I saw on the response, an additional 2% increase would cost approximately $840,000 out of our general fund. I can see how that's steep. Did we calculate a 1%,
It would just be roughly half of that.
half of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do we have an idea on plausibility of that?
At the no new revenue tax rate, there isn't capacity for that. And it's a consideration that city council would make, like, if you were to increase the tax rate high enough to be able to cover that expense. Just keeping in mind the other expenses and commitments that the city's already made that is creating the shortfall, not in fiscal year '26, but in fiscal year '27.
Of course, and you know, it was just a continual conversation that we've been having already about wages and compensation for our non-civil employees. And that's why when I saw the 3%, I wasn't sure, because it's 3% and 5% total, including health insurance.
Correct. It's
Yeah.
all costs that are associated, so like TMRS increases, health insurance increases, yeah, everything.
Okay.
So right now, what's contemplated is a 3% increase for employees. And then the other would be the incremental costs that are associated with, that would make up that other 2%, if you will. All the other cost drivers that are on the employer side.
Okay. And that's the no new revenue rate, though, that you were talking about, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so if council decides to increase that, could we get the numbers for what a 4% or an additional 1% on that would look like?
Yes, it's roughly $440,000 in the general fund.
And sort of the plausibility around that, I'd be interested to see that happen for our employees.
Yeah, and it would probably be good when we look at the forecast of some of the different tax rates. I can point it out to you there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because, you know, in some years, health insurance has gone up so high, I was having trouble, but glad to see that we could get the increase in health insurance inside that. Because there's been years, there's been, what, 5, 7 just for health insurance?
Correct, and we haven't talked, you know, or made any announcements, but there still could be a rate increase for our employees to their health insurance. So that's the employer costs that we're absorbing in there. There may be some employee part that is going to need to be absorbed by them as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes us to the first comparison, and that just to start off looking at the population of all the different peer cities. Austin is the largest with 993,000, and the smallest is actually San Marcos at 74,000. This population is as of July 1st, 2024, and just so that we're making sure that we're comparing a common measurement across all the cities, we're using the Census Bureau information. For San Marcos, we also included what planning development estimated our population to be as of July 2024, and that is closer to 86,000. This slide compares the fiscal year 25, so the current fiscal year, budgeted property and sales tax across all of our peer cities. The blue is the property tax revenue, and the gray is the sales tax revenue. Because the city of Austin is much larger than some of these other cities, it is not included in this particular metric. So you have a low of Georgetown and with 53 million combined, and a high of Round Rock with 132 million combined. The average across all of them, property tax is 45 million, and the average of sales tax is 43 million. And the city of San Marcos is lower on both of those fronts with 39 million for both property tax revenue and sales tax revenue. This is the budgeted tax rate for fiscal year 25. Across all peer cities, the average is just over 48 cents. And the city of San Marcos has the third from the highest at 60 cents. The lowest is Sugar Land with 35 cents, and Garland has the highest of just under 69 cents. The next couple slides will provide some insight into why the city of San Marcos has a higher tax rate than some of our peer cities. And we'll begin with looking at some tax-exempt properties. This information is current as of spring of 2025, and in total, the city has just under 1,100 tax-exempt properties. When you're looking at the chart, the dark gray are those tax-exempt properties. When you include area that is tax exempt as well as right-of-way area, there's a total of 9,700 acres that isn't taxable within the city. And of that, so when you compare that to the total acreage within the city, which is just over 25,000, over 37% of the city acreage within the city limit is not taxable. And you know that when you think about the city being the county seat and the extra county facilities that are in the city, because we are the county seat, we're home to the 6th largest public university in the state of Texas as well, with Texas State University, and all of their property is also tax exempt, as well as all the city's property. So when you look at all of that, you know, that adds up to 37% of the total land area is not taxable in San Marcos. As you all know, the city of San Marcos is also flood prone with the river. And what this slide shows is that there's 17% of the city that is in a floodplain. And so with property that is designated in the floodplain, the types of development that can develop within a floodplain is valued less than what a development would be, and what the types of development you could have on a property that is not in the floodplain. And when you look at the percent of property that's in a floodplain that is not also in an already tax exempt area, that's an additional 9%. So when you add the two of those together, you have 47% of the city's total land value that is either tax exempt or will have reduced value from being located within the floodplain. This is another reason that contributes to the city having a higher tax rate than some of our peer cities, and that is the median home values. You see across all of the peer cities, the city of San Marcos has the third lowest median home value. The average across all of the peer cities is just under 397,000, and San Marcos is 298,000. You have the low in Bryan at 231 and the high in Austin of 600,000. Also looking at the median household income across our peer cities, and San Marcos is similarly situated as the third lowest. It ranges in lowest in College Station at 47,000 to the highest in Sugar Land of 133,000. The average across all of them is 84,000. One of the contributing reasons that we know is just with the presence of the university, that does tend to water down some of the median household income, and there very well may be other contributing factors to that as well. So when you take the information from the previous slides, which is the median household value and as well as the budgeted property tax rates for fiscal year 25, we're able to calculate what the median household annual city property tax bill would be. So across all of our peer cities, the average is $1,842, and the city of San Marcos is just under the average at $1,798. This slide just takes a look at all of the fund expenditures. So this would be general fund, wastewater fund, electric fund, all of the city's expenditures, and it divides it by the city's population to arrive at an expenditure per capita. And across the average across all of the cities is 4,200, and you see City of San Marcos is at 4,600. One important thing to know is all those cities that have an asterisk by them also have a municipally owned electric utility. And there's just over 70 cities in the state of Texas that have a municipally owned electric utility. So it's important that we compare ourselves to those cities, because those cities tend to have a higher budget because they have an additional utility that the other cities don't. So if you look in the upper right-hand corner, the very top one that says MOEU for municipally owned electric utility, those cities have an average of just under 5,200 per capita, expenditures per capita. So when you compare the city of San Marcos to that number, well, we are well below the average. And now we will enter into talking about all of the city's funds and some items that are impacting or can impact all the city's funds. We'll begin by looking at some of the legislative impacts. There were multiple property tax related bills that have been filed during the special session that could negatively impact the city's budget and expand beyond just the general fund. Some of the legislations will just impact the general fund, and some can impact the city's budget in general. We don't actually have listed up here some of the bill numbers that would actually cap yearly spending at either the prior year's level or at some amount tied to the population and inflation growth. But some of those bill numbers include House Bill 63, 104, 117, 175. There's multiple bills that have been filed that would limit or put a cap on the city's annual expenses. There's a couple different approaches that have been proposed. One would take the population growth of the state as well as an inflation factor, add them together, and that would be the multiplier of how much the city's budget could grow from one year to the next. And another one takes those same variables and calculates the product of it. And so what we did was we estimated both of those for City Council on this slide. If you look at the fiscal year 25 budget, the total budget is $427 million. The interesting thing with the way that these bills or scary thing, I should say, the way that these bills are written is they include all funding sources. So this would be the capital improvement program as well. So when the city issues certificates of obligation or revenue bonds for major infrastructure projects, those are included in the current version of these bills. So included in the fiscal year 25 budget is the city CIP. And it's $427 million for fiscal year 25. If the version of the bill would pass that took the population and inflation, added them together, then the cap for fiscal year 26 would be $448 million. And you see the $481 million, that's what the total of the city's budget actually is for fiscal year 26, when you take the operating budget and add the capital improvement program budget together. So in that instance, we would be in a position where we would need to cut $34 million from the proposed fiscal year 26 budget, unless the voters would approve us going over that cap. That's if that bill was in place right now. Looking at that same information to the right, if the product was used, then the cap would be $428 million, and that would put us in a position where we'd have to cut $54 million from the budget. So it would create a really challenging environment for the cities, because what do you cut? What do you cut between $34 and $54 million out of the fiscal year 26 budget? And, you know, as we've been talking, as we've been moving throughout the budget workshops, the city is already struggling to cover costs, you know, for day-to-day operations and for major projects. And for, just as an example, we're in the process of building the second wastewater treatment plant at a cost of $100 million. And so when a large infrastructure project like that comes up, that would really create a constraint around the city if this bill was in place, and the ability for other operational expenses to grow. We'll touch on it a little bit later, but the city's general fund at the no new revenue tax rate is already going to be $5.6 million short, not in fiscal year 26, but in fiscal year 27. So when you start to look at the impacts of what some of these bills could mean to the city, it's a significant impact. So in total, across all of the funds, and this is not including CIP, so this is just operating funds, so it's not going to match the number that we just discussed. The total revenues across all funds is $367 million, and you can see it's in order from the largest to the smallest as you go through. The general fund, electric, wastewater, and the general fund's debt service fund make up the largest share of the total budget by far, and the same on the expense side. Those funds actually make up about 83% of the entire city budget. Now we're going to move on and speak more about the general fund. And begin by discussing the city council priorities that were met with the proposed FY26 budget. One of those priorities was to bring back a budget that was tied to the no new revenue tax rate. And the fiscal year 26 budget that's been proposed does use the no new revenue tax rate. That rate ended up being 62.78 cents. That will be the no new revenue tax rate for fiscal year 26. The budget also includes, as we discussed earlier, $750,000 for HSAB, which is an increase of $200,000. It includes creating the Office of Community Support and Resource Navigation. And it also includes funding for tenants' rights and $70,000. It is important to note with the tenants' rights that we're going to talk a little bit about federal funding that is expiring in fiscal year 27 and 28. The tenants' rights, the $70,000, is one of those programs that are currently being funded in fiscal year 26 with federal funding. Before we get into more of the general fund, this is a follow-up to one of the questions that City Council asked, and that was just to have a historical cost of living adjustment across the general employees, the fire, civil service, and the police civil service. So this provides information from fiscal year 2019 through fiscal year 2026. There is an asterisk under general employees for fiscal year '24. That is because that is the year that the compensation plan was implemented. So some employees did receive more than a 5% increase. The majority of the employees did receive a 5% increase, though, and that's why we have that there.
Quick question. Thank y'all for putting this together because that was something I requested. For the, let's see, 2020, 2021, 2022, that 2% stagnant rate, I imagine that was due to COVID and the fallout because of it. Was our civil service agreements in place during that time?
We did have civil service agreements in place, yes, ma'am.
So the last time we spoke, I had asked if that rate, that 4.5% and 5% were fixed rates, no questions asked, that's what the city was obligated to pay.
Pretty much, yes. The only thing would be is if we're going through a budget deficit and we're not able to make payments to other employees, then we could come back and have a conversation. So that was added in the last agreement. That was not there prior. And the reason we asked for that is because of what happened during COVID, where we saw that we were locked in. There was really nothing in there that would allow for that conversation to really take place and legally bring us to the table together. So they were amenable for us doing it this next time. But again, that would be that no raises were happening for anybody across the city. We were laying people off, that kind of thing. And so that's when we would have a conversation with them about it.
Okay, and that clause is still embedded in the
Yes,
current
ma'am.
agreement that we,
Yes,
is that the only clause that would allow us to
Yes.
deviate from that agreed? Okay.
Because the only other thing is, you know, we're in the last year, we're gonna be coming to council to ask you, do we do a renewal, you know, for 1 year, an extender, or do we come back and do a full renegotiation with both parties?
I see.
So we'll be talking with council about that in the future, but for this agreement that's in place right now, yes, that is exactly right, is that there's really nothing in there outside of that one clause that allows us to
Okay.
renegotiate the amounts.
And what was the 8% in 2023 for fire? What led to the significant?
Because they were behind market-wise at the first year, and so that's what they negotiated, was they wanted a total percentage across all 3 years, right? And so it was like, well, they wanted to front-load it versus having it be, you know, like an equal amount every year. So that's how they negotiated that particular agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mike.
You're good.
When you said it's coming up again, is that in September?
It will be effective October 2026.
Oh.
So we would need to
Oh,
have.
that's the effective date, okay.
Yes. So we have to meet by November to determine whether or not there's going to be an extender. If there's going to be an extender, then that would take effect, and we would just go through that process. If not, we have to start meeting in January and have to get all of those negotiations and conversations completed in time for budget adoption and all that, for that to be effective then October 1 of 2026. So that's one of the things, like I said, we'll be talking with mayor and council about to get your direction on how you would like to proceed, so that we're prepared in how we go into those discussions in November with the associations.
On this sheet here that we're looking at, it says that some employees receive more than 5%. What is more than 5%?
So there was an average, and I want to say the average was about 8% for some employees, and that was because you got your amount but depending on, you do a salary study, right? The salary study tells you if you're in the right pay scale, the right pay band, and if you're not, if you're too low, for example, they're gonna put you, that's your first step, is they're gonna put you in your new pay band to make sure that you're market competitive, right? So if that was the case, then someone might have gotten a little bit more, but those are individual cases, not necessarily across the board. That means that position was probably being underpaid before.
Okay.
And so that's how it went. And so it was that, and then it was the market adjustment. And then we also had something that rewarded people based on their time in their position. So we would also add that onto there. So not everybody would get that. It would just depend on where you were within the pay scale and where you are within your tenure within the
Just to
city.
keep it competitive with,
Correct.
yeah. And on the civil service, is that the low end at $94,000?
That's the average.
The average, okay, I just lost it,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the average. That's not
What
entry
is the low
level.
end for that? I'm just curious.
We'd have to look at the civil service pay scale, and it would be for fire and police. We'd have to see what entry level,
Okay, yeah.
I want to say, we can look at it. We can look at it during this presentation. It's on the website, so we can find it.
Thank you.
Just one other thing about the slide. We intended to add those up so that you wouldn't have to. So across that time period, the general employees, the total percent increase using 5% for fiscal year '24 was 16%. For fire, it was 31%, and for the police, it was 32%. Okay, now we'll move into some essential points in the general fund. And we're going to start off with the tax rate scenario slide, and this is something that Ms. Reyes touched on in the opening remarks. We're going to see this slide again, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Just as an introduction, though, the no new revenue tax rate is the 62.78, and you can see that it will generate $119 million. Well, it alone won't generate $119 million, but the total revenue budget is $119 million with the no new revenue tax rate. With the long-term focus tax rate, that's what we're calling it, the long-term focus tax rate of 64.96, that will generate an additional $1.9 million of revenue. That is actually also the tax rate that was estimated to be the no new revenue tax rate at our June workshop when we were talking about the, estimating what that no new revenue tax rate would be. It was 6496. And the voter approval tax rate for fiscal year '26 is 70.47 cents. That is the tax rate that if it's exceeded, it causes an automatic election. That tax rate would generate an additional $6.7 million of revenue during fiscal year '26. The operating results that you see at the bottom where it says $3 million, where we're going to spend $3 million more than what we're bringing in, that's that planned use of fund balance in excess of 25% that we discussed with City Council at the June workshop. That would be split over the new City Hall capital outlay and the equipment replacement plan.
And of course, our amazing new HR director already got the numbers for us. So firefighter is 63,599, and then officer base pay is 70,223. Now, there is a cadet that happens before, and that's 61,734. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
So the costs in the general fund are growing much faster than the money that is coming into the general fund to cover those costs. The city's two main sources of income, sales tax and property tax, are not keeping up with the expenses in the general fund. Those two revenue sources make up roughly 2/3 of the total revenue in the general fund. Sales tax in fiscal year '26 is expected to be lower than the sales tax we actually received in fiscal year '23, so 3 years ago. The property tax revenue under the no new revenue rate would drop by $200,000 if the city does not receive the property tax revenue for the housing finance corporations. That revenue, there's $629,000 included in the budget for the housing finance corporations. There's also an offsetting expense, just as a holding expense, because until we know for certain that those are going to remain on the tax roll, we can't really program that money to be spent on a particular expense.
And we did get, just in all full transparency, we did get word that we have been victorious at the court. And so we were awarded the motion for summary judgment. We just found out at 1 a.m. this morning. However, we're taking a very cautious approach on that because they can still appeal. And so we're still not putting that money into play until we're absolutely sure that they've exhausted all remedies and that we can do that safely. So just FYI,
So that will bring in is really a-
$700,000.
No, I'm not looking at the dollars. I'm talking about, it says 3 properties purchased by housing finance corporations will bring in. Well, maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Correct.
Okay.
The problem is that the way that the tax rate calculation was done is that it was kind of double being used against us, if you will, because the appraisal district included it in our tax rate,
As if we were going to get the
as
money.
if we were going to get the money, but
Okay.
then yet we weren't able to get the money, so it made the no new revenue rate lower because of that. The no new revenue rate would have been closer to what we originally brought to you in June, because we were taking it completely out.
Right.
However, since they put it in, and Mr. Locke did reach out to try to see if he could get them to take it out until we had more information on this, and they left it in.
Okay. Thank you.
And the final bullet on this slide is, for the second year in a row, the value of new development has been just enough to make up for the declines in the value of existing, and the decline of the value of existing properties. Without that new development, the property values would actually decrease, and so that would mean that property tax revenues would have actually declined too. So that's how important that new development has been to the city over the past 2 years. This slide just talks to how important and how the city depends on the growth in sales and property tax revenue. When you look at building projects like fire stations, roads, flood control systems, the funding for these projects has been reduced in our forecast when we look out in multiple years from 20 million to 10 million. We were programming being able to cover about $20 million a year in these types of projects, and we just had to reduce that to $10 million given the current constraints that we're in. Those two revenue sources also add or remove programs and or services, or add or improve programs and services for residents. They help us keep up with the rising cost so that services aren't reduced. You know, we've talked about, and you see the last 2 bullets there, where over the past in fiscal year 25, departments had to keep their budgets flat. So when you factor in inflation, that was essentially a 2.5% cut. In fiscal year 26, departments were also asked to collectively cut $100,000. So for the past 2 years, budgets have not been able to keep pace with inflation. It also allows us to hire enough to run programs and services and to keep pace with the growth of the city, and to pay employees competitively so that we can attract and keep and retain qualified workers. So that long-term focus rate that we talked about, the 6,496, would bring in, as we discussed, about $1.9 million and additional property taxes. And Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez isn't here. He asked a question at the June workshop that at the time I thought I answered correctly, and after reflection, I'd like to walk that back a little bit. His question that he asked was, if we go with the no new revenue rate, are we going to be kicking anything down the road? And at the time, what I was thinking of is, because we were talking about how we wanted to have a structurally balanced budget, and the no new revenue rate does allow us to replace that one-time funding that we were looking at using to cover those recurring expenses. So in that regard, we're not kicking anything down the road. What I wasn't thinking of at the time are some of the bullets that are up on the slide here that are not included, you know, with that no new revenue rate cannot fund. You know, the first one being the federal funding that will run out in FY27 and 28. You know, in total, that's just over $1 million. And we need to begin setting aside the staffing for Fire Engine 7. In total, that's $2.2 million annually. And so the approach has been to set aside about a third, so a little over $700,000 a year. And we're not able to do that at that no new revenue rate. At the no new revenue rate, the projected shortfall, not in '26, but in '27, is $5.6 million. So the long-term focused rate, bringing in that additional revenue would help bring that down. This could also be, it's important to keep in mind that this could also be one of the last year that the city can adjust the tax rate with the level of flexibility that we have this year. If any of these state laws that have been, or it's not a state law yet, but any of the bills that have been proposed in special session were to pass. And the final bullet there, new state laws being considered could limit the city's ability to fund important services and infrastructure.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a list of the 1.1 million?
Yes.
Okay, if it was in this, I didn't read it. Is it in this presentation, or like, is it an attachment?
It is not in detail
Okay.
in the presentation. We can provide it to you. I have a list of those projects if you wanted me to tell you what they are now.
Are they coming up?
No, it's not in this presentation, ma'am, no.
I guess we're gonna contemplate in the future, like in a couple of slides, like where we're going with this, right? So yeah, I guess it would be helpful to me because I remember vaguely, like some of those items were kind of like, or some of the ARPA items were kind of just like one, like, I imagine them to be like more one-time expenses, like some of the marketing stuff
Yes.
and some, right? And so I'm just like wondering, does that 1.1 million include all the ARPA money or just those programs that y'all have identified as like, there might be interest in?
The ongoing ones,
The
so.
ongoing ones,
So
yeah.
it's the cybersecurity folks that we've hired in IT. Mr. Mingle can kind of probably tell us a little bit more in detail too, unless Mr. Locke has the information. But it's the staffing resources that we said we were going to continue. We were going to fund with ARPA dollars to get us started, but then we knew we had to absorb those things, and we made those commitments to absorb those things once the ARPA funding went away. So you want to maybe give a list?
Yeah, and it would be helpful if you could tell me like what meeting we made those commitments as well, in the future, not now, I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's ringing a bell, I think, the cybersecurity. Now, if it was a tech person that actually worked with Apple, maybe I would be more passionate about keeping them around, but we could talk about that later.
Well, there are two security analysts, cybersecurity analysts, and the downtown ground specialist. So those are the three positions that are funded. There's actually four. The positions, but one of them are included in the fiscal year '26 budget, so we're not talking about that as we're looking forward in '27 to '28. From an operating fund perspective, these are ongoing funds. There's a total of $340,000 that we need to, that's expiring, that will need to be absorbed in fiscal year '27, and $119,000 in fiscal year '28. Some of those expenses include I might want to ask Mr. Vigo to take a look at these, because I don't know which one of these might continue and which one might go on. I don't want to speak incorrectly.
All of those.
Or do all of those continue?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so all of these, so examples, include the partnership with Prevent a Litter, Central Texas, that was $45,000. The eviction preventive services, that was $70,000. Diversion beds through Evoke Wellness, that was $50,000. The New World maintenance, that was $80,000. That was for software. The intrusion prevention system, that was $35,000. There's a mental health clinician collaboration, that was $70,000. There's a public services center, emergency operations center upgrade that has an ongoing cost associated with it of about $9,000 annually. And
It's also how we started funding.
Yes.
Right.
We've already made that adjustment into the general fund.
Yes, in fiscal year '26.
Yeah.
So we can provide the list of this. You know, one of the biggest ones that I should also mention in fiscal year '27 is the contribution to transit. We have been using some federal funding, and we're estimating that the general fund's contribution to transit will be $350,000 higher in fiscal year '27 than what it is in fiscal year '26.
Gotcha. Yeah, that would be super helpful because I'm going to be completely honest. I do not think that, at least it wasn't my understanding that we were making like blanket commitments to find funding for a lot of these things. And I remember specifically making this comment at least once, but most likely multiple times, and the various times that we went over ARPA money, that I would appreciate having more, like a better sense of like measures of efficacy or measures of, I guess, the impact of the money, right? I feel like that is really important to me just because these were items, I think across the nation, governments, local governments, you know, we had all this money and we had a time constraint to use it and we had a lot of needs. And I think we did a really good job deploying those emergency monies to the projects and entities that needed them. I just think that it's important now that we're under like kind of more of a financial constraint to like revisit those items to see if we really do want to continue to fund them. Does that make sense?
I know the staffing, and I know we can look at that, but the staffing, we wouldn't have hired people without having a caveat, because there would have been a caveat that it was only subject to funding for several years. So those people who were brought on, there was that commitment that we would transition them into the general fund. We would not do away with those positions afterwards. So Mr. Meikle can go back and look at some of the information when we were presenting that to mayor and council. But definitely that was the thought process, was that it would be seed money to get these things started, and then we would have to operationalize those after those monies went away.
Yeah, just even pointing me towards like the general timeframe of those discussions might be helpful, because I remember the very lengthy back and forth discussion we had regarding the like the equity director. And it was one of those things where we were talking about, well, this is gonna be like a pilot or like a trial and da, da, da. I remember that conversation going into detail because I think that some of my colleagues, like Mr. Gleason, kind of was having a difficult time understanding the conceptualization of equity that we were talking about. But what we did land, and I appreciate, is that we were gonna see kind of what the vibes were, like how it went down. But that's the only position that I remember vaguely. And I'm not trying to say we wanna like get rid of them, I just think that it's important to go and assess that, right?
We'll have to take a look, and what I'm recalling, and Hayden, you'll have to tell me, but I believe it was during the visioning session 2 years ago that we had at the Paulina Espinosa Community Hall, where they had the A, Bs, and C lists, where we went through, and that was where it was continuing the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and so that was brought back. I realized that was a difficult day for many, because that was we lost somebody tragically on that day. But that was the day that was discussed. So we can go through and look at the information, but that was when some of that was discussed, because that's when we got council consensus to go ahead and move forward with keeping the position. Because you're right, when it was first started, it was started more as like, let's check and see, let's see how this is working and all that kind of thing, and then test. Once Ms. Bettis Carey came on, for example, then that was something that y'all were able to see that, and we were able to talk through what we saw as going forward and ask for y'all to continue that so that we could bring that funding on to general fund.
Yeah, I think we were pretty deliberate on anytime we were adding people to go, okay, at some point, this is going to be, do we keep them, do we not, where are we gonna go? Because it is gonna hit.
Right, yeah. So if you could just point me towards those deliberate conversations, that would be helpful.
Okay. And something that Mr. Meikle just brought to my attention too, a lot of those operational costs are contracts. So the city would have the option to not renew the contract past the year where we have the ARPA funding to carry it through.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that brings us into some state legislative impacts that just impact the general fund. We're beginning with Senate Bill 9. And this proposes to change the multiplier that's used to calculate the voter approval tax rate. So this is how much existing growth the city is allowed to recognize revenue from one fiscal year to the next. It's currently at 3.5%, and Senate Bill 9 proposes to reduce it to 2.5%. Some of you may recall that back in 2019, Senate Bill 2 reduced the voter approval rate multiplier from 8% down to 3.5%. So it's seen a couple iterations now. The latest that's been proposed is to reduce it down further to 2.5%. If that were in place for fiscal year 26, it would reduce our voter approval rate by an estimated 0.62 cents, which is about $632,000 in annual revenue. So the current voter approval rate is 70.47 cents. If this bill were in place, it would be 69.85 cents. We also have House Bill 9 that was approved. This wasn't anything that was proposed in special session. It was approved, and it increased the exemption on personal property taxes from $2,500 to $125,000. This will not kick in until fiscal year 27, and we're estimating that it will reduce the city's property tax revenue by $420,000 annually when it does kick in fiscal year 27.
And because of the odd name of personal property, would you explain what this really is?
Yeah, this is more of the inventory and furniture, fixtures, and equipment for businesses. It's related to business property and not what you would think that a person would own. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for the public, because they started a new special session, it's going to be Senate Bill 10, if you wanted to look up the text. And I believe it was engrossed as of, what's today? As of today
Okay.
in the Senate. So unsurprising, but yeah, just for the public to know.
All right. Thank you. We also have some legislative impacts that will impact fire employees. It's an unfunded mandate. House Bill 4144 requires the city to provide critical illness supplemental benefit of up to $100,000 for firefighters retiring after January of 26 that meet certain criteria, that being that the firefighters diagnosed with specific conditions and that the city does not offer a retiree health plan comparable in cost and coverage to active employee benefits, which we currently do not. So we know that that will have a financial impact on the city. There's also House Bill 198 that requires occupational cancer screenings to be offered to firefighters as of June of 26. So we're currently working with our benefits consultant to better understand our options and addressing these two bills and what the financial impact will be. And the last item that we'll talk on is that the voters will decide in November whether to increase the homestead property tax exemption for school districts from $100,000 to $140,000. If this passes, it does not have any impact on city revenues. However, it could provide property tax relief for city residents. And this next slide, if the bill were to pass, it shows what the impact would be for the average homestead resident. So as you look at fiscal year 25, those are the current tax rates for each one of those taxing jurisdictions. And you can see that the total tax rate is $1.96 per $100 of value. And for the average homestead, the tax bill was just over $6,000. So in fiscal year 26, if this should pass and the school district exemption is increased to $140,000, We've updated the tax rates with what we know has been proposed by each one of these taxing jurisdictions. And so the total tax rate would increase to just over $2 per $100 of value. And overall, though, the tax bill would go down to $5,800 from the $6,000 during the fiscal year '25. We also included a box that if the city were to adopt a tax rate of 64.96, that long-term focus tax rate, that the annual tax bill would be $5,958. So it would increase the all tax bill. It would still be lower than what the tax bill was for the current fiscal year '25. Now just getting into what the fiscal year '26 budget looks like for the general fund. Just starting off with the major revenue sources, this first one being property tax. The blue color is what the city has for operations. The gray color is for debt service, and the orange is for our tax increment zones. What the city can use for operations is blue, and that's what you see the green box around. You see for each one of the years how much property tax revenue grew year over year. So you can see from '22 to '23, it was $5.8 million, and then you see from '25 to '26, it was $500,000. This is using round numbers. If the city, and actually we cannot spend the HFC money right now until we know for certain. So adjusted for that, the property tax revenue for operations actually went down by $200,000. This is looking at the other major revenue source, our sales tax revenue, across that same time period. And you can see for each year, the change in sales tax revenue. From fiscal year '23 to '24, there was a large decrease, and we rebounded a little bit in '25, and we're estimating we've estimated a 1.8% growth for fiscal year '26. And even with that estimation, you can see that our sales tax for fiscal year '26 is lower than what our sales tax was for fiscal year '23. So this is the general fund budget for with the no new revenue rate of the 6.278. If you look at the fiscal year 2026 proposed, just to walk through the slide, it does also have the '24 actuals, the '25 original budget, and the '25 estimate where we think we're going to finish. So for fiscal year '26, we're estimating to begin with a fund balance of $34 million. Bring in $119 million of revenue and have expenses of $122 million. There's a planned use of fund balance of the $3 million, and that would leave us with a fund balance of $31 million. The fund balance requirement for the general fund at 25% is just under $30 million, so we're above where we need to be with the general fund. We began the presentation looking at this slide. This is the tax rate scenario slide. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about each one of these tax rate scenarios and look at them in terms of a forecast. Before we get into the forecast, these are just the underlying assumptions so that you understand what's making up the numbers for revenues and expenses and the forecast. The forecast is going to cover the time period of '27 to '29. For annual property tax, valuation change is 0, and we haven't forecasted any value change because we're still seeing the existing values still stabilizing. And actually, we follow the Texas Real Estate Research Center, publishes something monthly that has the median price, the median home price of compared to the prior year. The most recent release was in June, and the June prices declined about 6% compared to June of 2024. So we're still seeing a decline in home values, which is what is creating the existing values decreasing, and, you know, and why it's important for that new value being added to the roll so that the overall tax base is growing. On the sales tax side, the average sales tax growth for each year is estimated to be 1.8%. You can see the list of expenses for annual personnel. It's between 3% and 5%, and this is to allow for the contractual increases for meet and confer. We don't assume any new positions are added, other than those positions that we already discussed that are currently being funded by the ARPA dollars. There's an allowance for 3% for expenses for the operations to grow with inflation. There's no operational budget for paying for a new city hall, so there's nothing related to that built into this. Again, the expiring federal funding, the total is 1.1 million, and you can see how much of it is included in FY27, how much of it is in FY28. For the Engine 7 staffing, the total is 2.2 million, and we take a third of that over those 3 years. And then for that citywide software allocation that we're trying to correct, that would go from 27 to 30. The total's $1 million, and it would be $250,000 a year.
On the Engine 7 staffing, how many people is that?
15.
15? Thank you.
So beginning with the voter approval tax rate, looking at this slide, the green is the revenue and the blue is expense. So ideally, you would like the green to at least be equal to, and if not greater than, the blue color. So if the voter approval tax rate were adopted, you can see the impact over these 4 years. So in the outer years, you have budget shortfall. So in 2028 and 2029, you can see the shortfall. Within that box, if you see a green arrow up, that's the additional revenue that's being brought in that year over expenses. If you see a red arrow pointing down, that's how short we are in that particular year. So for example, in 2028, we would be short $2.7 million. There is an asterisk on all these slides I want to point out for 2026. There was that planned use of fund balance of $3 million, so that is not taken into consideration with the excess capacity here because we're planning to use that $3 million of fund balance. So moving to the long-term focus tax rate, you can see that the budget shortfalls increase. We actually now start to recognize that shortfall in fiscal year 27, with fiscal year 27 being short $3.6 million. And we talked about how it would generate an additional $1.9 million in fiscal year 26. So you can see that's what's showing up on the screen for the fiscal year 26. And for the no new revenue tax rate, which is how the budget was prepared and submitted to council, has the largest budget shortfalls. We are balanced for fiscal year 26, and the fiscal year 27 shortfall is 5.6, and you can see how the shortfall increases as you go out through the outer years. This last forecast actually takes that voter approval tax rate. So this would be if the city were to go with the voter approval tax rate. And it has the same assumptions, except that we assume that the taxable value will grow at 2.5% each year. So this forecast is actually including some taxable value growth of 2.5% a year. In the background, you can see the fund balance, the gray color that looks like a steep hill. That is the city's fund balance. And so you can see in 2028, even with the 2.5% of taxable value growth, that is the first year that the city would experience a budget shortfall where we wouldn't bring in enough revenues to cover expenses. And by the time, if we did nothing and just let these assumptions play out, the assumptions that I shared with you, then the city would be out of fund balance by the time got to 2033. We would have depleted all of our fund balance.
All the fund balance, the 25% we need to keep, or is that the excess fund balance?
That is the 25% we need to keep. So we have no money in the bank in the general fund.
Oh. Okay.
Of course, we would not allow that to happen, but
Thank you for that.
That money would be gone.
so this is a tax rate summary of those three different tax rate options: the no new revenue rate, the long-term focus rate, and the voter approval rate. All of them are structurally balanced. All of them include the additional $200,000 for HSAB. All of them include the Office of Community Support and Resource Navigation. All of them include the fiscal year 26 equipment replacement being cash funded, and those were the radios and the Fire Engine 7 that we talked about in the June workshop. There is a total of $100,000 of departmental supplemental requests that are approved in all of them. There's no shortfall in fiscal year 26. The additional capacity that each one of those tax rates would generate, the long-term focus rate is 1.9 million, and the voter approval is 6.7 million. And the estimated shortfall for fiscal year 27 with the no new revenue rate is 5.6 million. The long-term focus rate is 3.6 million, and the voter approval rate, there would actually would be additional capacity of 1.7 million.
I pulled up the adopted budget policy statement from fiscal year '25, and that's where it was part of your adopted policy statement. Hayden's going to look and see in the budget presentation as far as the ongoing commitments, but I'll give y'all this if you would like to get a copy of it. But that's where it talked about the funding and the priority A, Bs, and Cs. It was part of your adopted budget policy statement.
Which we did back in February.
February of '24. Correct. I'm gonna pass that. Yes, yes. We can make some more. I just printed it real quick when I pulled it up.
Do you want me to continue, or is that something you'll go over? Okay, all right. So this slide just has the general fund's current and future needs. The first three bullets we've already talked about. Those are included in the forecast that we just looked at. Those are part of the assumptions. What's not included in those is that at some point, the police and fire staffing plans or studies will be completed, and then there'll be the additional cost to start to fund whatever the recommendation is in those staffing studies. What we included up on the screen is what the old approach was, which would average anywhere between $400,000 and $700,000, just based on the approach at that time. So we're not sure what the actual cost would be because the studies are not completed. Not sure what they would recommend.
When do we expect to have Fire Station 7 built? That's a ways off, correct? As in more than a year?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Les Stevens, Fire Chief. Yes, ma'am. Station 7, the physical structure has been talked about as part of a future bond election, but we didn't want to further delay the addition of that apparatus because we are not adequately serving that portion of the community.
Right.
So the council actually purchased the fire engine, and our plan was to run it out of station number 5, much like we did engine 6 until
Right.
the building was built. So if the bond election were to occur in 2029, and that was the first of those projects, it wouldn't be open until 2031 or later.
And it takes a couple of years to get one up and running?
That's what we were anticipating from 29 to complete the design, and then a year for construction to open around 2031 or after. And that's the earliest.
Okay.
The engine will be here in the next few months.
Yeah. And I understand why we want to get the staffing done sooner, and we did that for 6, and it was successful. But this seems really early for 7.
No, ma'am, that station was supposed to have been built in 2008
Oh, I know.
as part of the Blanco Vista neighborhood, and we still don't have it. We lost the land to the developer. We opened Station 5, and we've kind of just left it. But Blanco Vista and now all of Whisper, along with the neighborhoods being developed between the access road and 21, are not within the service area of Station 5.
I know we need it, and that's why I was asking when it looked like we would have it. But it looks like it's a number of years away reality, even though, we need it yesterday. And so I was just wondering how far we could push that 2.2. Are we just hoping that something will happen and we'll get a station sooner? We want to be ready.
No, all along, our plan has been to operate that apparatus out of Station 5. And if a call came in to not dispatch both of those apparatus, so we would have the redundancy, even though they weren't located separately, we would have the redundancy and coverage of having 2 units there. Whereas right now, if Station 5 is on a call, you're either getting engine 4 from Wonderworld or engine 1 from downtown in excess of 20 minutes to Blanco Vista.
So this is our way of providing some of that coverage without the new station. It's just taking longer.
To use Mr. Gonzalez's, Anderson's word from yesterday, say stopgap measure. Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you.
That helps a lot.
Thank you.
Another cost that we need to consider is the additional funding that may be needed for the emergency medical services. We're estimating that could be up to $1.5 million annually. And just in general, without an increase in revenue, expenses will need to be significantly cut in fiscal year 27. We saw those slides where the current estimated shortfall is over $5 million, which could result in eliminating or impacting programs and or service levels. So this is how the city is currently responding. We're maintaining or reducing operational expenses. We're reviewing staffing to see if work can be done more efficiently with fewer people as attrition occurs. We're updating the vehicle leasing study to ensure that that program is still the most cost-effective approach on fleet management. Certainly when you factor in the change in interest rates from when the study was originally performed a few years ago. We're reviewing the vehicle take-home policy to see if changes are needed with that. And we're reviewing how vehicles are assigned across all the departments that use them to see if there's a potential for lowering costs there as well. So the major takeaways in the general fund is that the service delivery and infrastructure costs are outpacing the city's ability to pay for them. Setting the tax rate at that long-term focus rate or higher will better position the city to address the current and the future needs. This may be the final year that the city has this level of flexibility to adjust the tax rate, just given some of the bills that have been proposed in special session. And again, without an increase in revenue, expenses will need to be cut in fiscal year 27, which could result in eliminating or impacting programs or service levels. And that brings us to a decision point slide, with the first of which being what tax rate. And this is a decision that City Council will begin to make this evening when council sets the maximum proposed tax rate. When council does do that, that just creates the ceiling for fiscal year 26. When council actually adopts that tax rate, it can be equal to or lower. It just can't be any higher.
Could you explain to me?
Would you hit your button again, please, sir? Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, can you explain to me on the medical, emergency medical service increase 1.5? What actually is the increase for that?
That is is being caused from the different ESDs that were part of the San Marcos, Hayes County regional partnership pulling out. And so that is making the city have to look at what is, how we're going to continue to provide those EMS services. In terms of any additional detail, I'm not sure if somebody might be able to elaborate a little on that.
Councilmember Lonzo Anderson, Assistant City Manager. So currently, right now, we're doing an assessment of EMS evaluation landscape in the city. ESD 1 has pulled out at the end of November 2024. ESD 9 is still having currently conversations about moving forward, setting up their own EMS system. So that leaves just us as a partner. And so when it comes to raises, benefits, incentives, we're the lone partner that has to pay those amounts. So therefore, it's leaving us in a position where there's going to be a significant increases towards our contribution.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, I know you sent an email, so sorry for not knowing it off the top of my head. When you say ESD 1 pulled out, when was that effective? Or I guess when was the decision made, and then you said the effective date?
Yes, I just actually looked at that notification. That was in November 2024.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That's kind of what precipitated the conversation with mayor and council in executive session, was getting the intent that they were going to be pulling out, and then that ESD 9 was also intending to do the same. And so that's when we got with y'all to talk about a plan for moving forward in terms of what do the options look like. So the study has been commissioned for EMS to look at the options so that we can get a recommendation to bring that forward in terms of what are the viable options with ESD 1 and ESD 9 moving out and only leaving us as the partner. Then what does that mean going forward? And so, and what would be associated costs for each of those options?
How is the city remaining on top of the ongoing conversation of ESD 9? Because I know we've had conversations regarding just like the lack of context and the different conversations that have been happening outside of our city, right? So within the different ESDs. I'm just curious because, I attended the last ESD 9 meeting. I told you about that. And I guess it's difficult for me to keep up with the conversation because it's like, okay, you're doing this study, right? But is that study taken into consideration like the ongoing conversations that are happening right now, or y'all are engaging in the study with the assumption that ESD 9 is going to pull out?
Correct.
So part of the study will look at 4 different areas. Do we continue the San Marcos Hayes County EMS? Do we establish a municipal-owned EMS department? Do we establish a fire-based EMS system? Or do we look at a third party from a private standpoint to provide emergency medical services? And so those are the 4 different landscapes that we're looking at this study from. We already started a kickoff meeting. We have exchanged many different correspondence. Consultants will be in town next week for about 4 days. They're going to be doing interviews not only with city leadership, county, ESD, EMS, also union representatives as well too. And then from there, we'll be going to benchmarking, looking at about 8 to 10 different cities that have the same similarities for San Marcos. And then they will put a proposal together looking at all of those different dynamics, also with associated costs. Also looking at a stopgap measure to include long-term where we're trying to go, to also include a performance evaluation model as well too.
So just to kind of wrap around is that after we got direction from mayor and council, what we did was we convened a meeting with ESD 9 and also with Hayes County representation to say.
But by Hayes County representation, what do you mean specifically?
It was the president of the ESD 9 board who also serves with Hayes County San Marcos EMS, as well as the county commissioner, that's on that body as well,
Who is?
Commissioner Inglesby.
Oh, gotcha.
So had conversation, let them know the direction that we had received from mayor and council.
Wait, I thought she pulled away from that because of health no?
No, she's still a member.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, so she's still a member. So we've been having ongoing conversations with both entities.
And the union as well?
And then we also had a separate meeting with union representatives with Sanchez and I see his name in my head. And Zach, yes. So upon y'all's request, we also had a meeting with them to talk through the fact that we were slowing this down per council direction. 12 to 18 months is what we were looking at so that we could study to find out what the most viable option is going forward. And they just were very thankful for being brought into the conversation. As part of this EMS study that Mr. Anderson just spoke about, they will also be talked to and asked and conferred with to make sure that they're part as a stakeholder in the process. So that is going forward. Now, you know, we can control what we can control. We can't control what the other bodies are doing. It's our understanding, based on the conversations that we have had, is that they are all wanting to make sure that there's not service disruption to our community members. We've all said that very, very clearly, that was important to us. They are, when I say they, I mean ESD 9 is still moving forward through getting their process up and formalized so that they're ready to go. Their desire is for them to be closer to the 12 months than the 18 months, but we've said we may not be ready necessarily for that, and so we asked for them to work with us on that. We had our last meeting, and we actually brought in Chief of Hayes County San Marcos EMS, Joe Rosales, and also brought Chief Stevens, just to make sure, again, that we're all operating from the same card and not, you know, having different meetings in different contexts. So what we committed to is that we were going to continue to meet at least bi-monthly to continue to have our conversations, and then if anything comes up, that they would please let us know if anything changes on their end or anything changes on our end. We committed to do the same. So since that time, we did get a call from Diane, who asked to meet with us, and so we actually have a meeting next week. So I don't know what they're going to talk with us about specifically, but anything that they say that may change anything, we will obviously keep council in the loop and let you know what's happening. So Mr. Anderson, I know he has sent emails just letting y'all know about the study and where we are, but definitely want to make sure y'all stay apprised also of any new information that we become aware of.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to publicly state, I appreciate your efforts in keeping us up to date. I heard your reputation in Dallas is one where you try to lead with like kind of research-based, kind of trying to get best practices and a thorough assessment of all the moving pieces. So I appreciate that. I'm definitely seeing that unfold. But I think it's also important for me to name that this conversation went in a really interesting direction, just given that it appeared that the city didn't have as much information. Like Stephanie often says, we don't know what we don't know. And so I just want to name, it was disappointing to get information from external sources, but I will say just for the folks, there's a lot of people keeping an eye on these EMS conversations, that we're doing everything possible to get every stakeholder's perspective. And I really, really appreciate that a lot. So thank you so much. Thank you.
And Ms. Rodriguez, I mentioned that during the presentation, I would show you what the impact of that 400,000 and was in the forecast, and I did not do that. But if you look at on this slide at the long-term focus rate, the 6496, the second from the bottom says fiscal year 26 available to address current and future needs. And it shows that there's currently a capacity of 1.9 million. That would just be 1.5 million if we did go with the additional percent. And then if you go to the next one below that, the forecasted fiscal year 27 results, the shortfall would go from 3.6 million to 4 million. So that would be the impact of adding an additional percent.
Is it now our turn?
Yes, ma'am.
You're waiting on us?
Yes.
Okay. Council, what do you think? We've been presented a lot of information, and some of it's a little grim, but it's reality, and that's what the staff is telling us, and now we need to figure out where we want to go. So I've got my little chart here, ready for y'all to give me a response. These are our choices up here. And I have what we said on May 20th and also on June 26th. If anybody needs a reminder of where they were at the time.
Reminder would be helpful.
On May 20th, there was actually a range offered. We were looking at, but the voter approval rate was different, and the no new revenue rate was different because we didn't have the July 25th final numbers, as final as I get, I guess, from the appraisal district. And that changed things. So nobody's sitting in a room going, oh, we're going to cook the books here. It's just, we get that, the first estimate, I guess, in April.
In April.
And then in July, we get the better numbers.
Yes.
So we were looking at a range between 63.41 to 64.47. And Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Mendoza were at 63.41. Mr. Scott was at the other end of that range, 64.47. And there were 4 of us that said, yes, bring us, we'll look at the range. In June, what I have is that there were 5 of us that were at the 64.96, because we had more information. Mr. Scott and Mr. Mendoza were at the 64.03. Now we've got the choices a little different, but there's the 3 choices. None of them great. But staff does need to know from us how to move forward and bring us the budget back in a month, well, less than a month, next month.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll see it on September 2nd.
Yes.
Today's August 18th. There's not much time for it. So, council, your thoughts? Whoever wants to go first?
I went first last time.
Okay. Yeah, whenever you're ready to speak, turn on your microphone. That lets me know you want to
So I'm
talk.
not going to give a big speech about this, but my mind has unfortunately changed because of the new information here. I'm going to have to stick with the 64.96 right now. I'm not crazy about raising it too drastically, but this is obviously where we need to be at the very least. So I'm going to go with 64.96 for myself.
All right. Which is kind of in the middle and what the staff is recommending. Anyone else?
Does it have to be like 64.96 or 70.47? Like there's no,
Anywhere in between.
yeah. Yeah, I guess it's just difficult to do that since I don't have a list of the forecasted results. Like I know you've done it like in piecemeal, but yeah, I was just curious. I'm still thinking.
How about Mr. Gonzalez? Either Mr. Gonzalez, I would love to hear from.
I think in May I voted 63.41. Could that still be an option if someone else chooses to go that route?
That was because it was the which rate?
No new revenue rate at
It
the
was the
time.
no new revenue rate, which we thought was going to do more for us at the time, and now we've discovered that it's not.
In that case, thank you for mentioning that. I guess I'm gonna go with 64.96.
Thank you. I have recorded your preference. Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez.
So I'm trying to do math in my head, and I don't know if that's the best thing to do right now. But, okay, so my question, I guess, my first question would be, if we went with the 64.96, and we're estimating essentially a budget shortfall in 2027, are we going to be having this same conversation about raising taxes again next year?
So you weren't here when Mr. Locke talked about it, and he was saying that you had asked a very pointed question last time and said, are we just kicking the can down the road? And he answered you no, because he was thinking about the fact that it was a structurally balanced budget that we were just hoping to get to. But he said after further reflection, he really should have answered yes to your question, because there are things that we're not able to fund even with the no new revenue rate, which is why we're asking for y'all to consider something higher, because we know that there's already going to be problems. Now, the thing that you will be faced with and we will be faced with is with whatever the state legislature decides to do. And if they say that we're part of the 2.5% revenue cap, then you may not have the flexibility that you currently have right now to go up as high towards the voter approval rate. So we've given y'all some options. Y'all can go anywhere in between those options, but we feel honestly that we don't think that we're being fiscally responsible if we recommend anything lower than the long-term of the focused rate on that, the 64.96. But also understand that that does mean that, yes, we could be looking at coming back and asking council to help us prioritize and make some cuts, make some changes, because that still is not going to get us exactly where we need to be necessarily long-term.
All right, so I guess second question, doing math. The difference between the 3.6 million shortfall and the 1.7 million surplus, so 5.3. Yes. Is that just divisible by the 5.51 cent difference in those two? So essentially something around 67 cents would put us at 0 for 2027. So it would cover that 3.6 million shortfall, but not create a 1.7 million surplus.
Yes,
Right, roughly?
or rather, that in rough numbers, every penny is about $800,000.
Okay, well, I guess that would have been easier than trying to do math. So I guess to answer your question, Mayor, I guess the answer I would say would be whatever number would put us at not having a projected shortfall or surplus next year, which should be roughly around 67 cents.
Okay. Ms. Rodriguez, Ms. Garza. This is tough.
Right, yeah, especially with that scary, spooky slide about if you guys don't think about this now, our piggy banks are gonna be empty. Which I know is like a very valid concern, and we've told you multiple times, just tell us the truth, and so we can ease into crisis mode. I'm just joking because it's my coping mechanism for being anxious. I think I'm leaning right now towards, this is tough.
While you're thinking, can I ask Ms. Reyes a question?
Yes, ma'am.
How deep have y'all gotten into the topic of where cuts would be made? Y'all gotten very deep in that yet?
It depends on where council's willing to go, Mayor, just to be very, very frank,
Okay.
because if we don't get enough money, we haven't broached the topic of, it starts getting into staff, quite honestly, because of how lean the departments have had to run, not having kept up with inflation.
It's flat budget and actually a loss for last year.
So we really, we've done the best that we can to kind of trim some things, that didn't impact service levels, but then it starts getting into, we're a people-intensive fund, and so it starts to get into that. So it really is going to depend on where council goes. What I have shared in terms of my personal philosophy, management-wise, and of course, this takes council support in order to do it, is that for me, I would much rather keep staff that we currently have and treat them well, keep them well, do all the things well before we grow our staff. The only exception with that is obviously with some of the fire stuff that we've talked about, is because that means being able to call 911 and get a reasonable response time. And we have applied for the SAFER grant, which means that, again, we have to have a match with that. And so there are dollars that come with that. So we have not gotten real far into looking at just how much, because we need the guardrails from mayor and council about what you're willing to do, to know what we need to do on our part to start looking at those cuts and how we get into 27.
Okay, I was just thinking about programs. I know a place that I've worked in the past, not the university, there was a % cut coming, and I'll never forget this. Somebody said, well, we're not getting that out of paper clips. You know, that's going to mean some really serious
Right. And,
talk.
you know, obviously with program cuts, we would definitely be bringing those things to mayor and council, you know, to talk about them. I know there have been some things that have been cut from, like, for example, fire and police, but then they've gotten people who've come and said, hey, well, we'll donate money to make these things still happen. And so we've been able to do that with those kinds of situations. But that's not the case for every department. Not every department has that ability to do that. And so we've just got to figure out, based on the guardrails that you give us, what we're working with. We are going to do our part to looking at attrition. We are going to do our part to look at take-home vehicles. We are looking at our part to look at the lease vehicles to make sure that's still the best, you know, the best deal for us. So we are getting in to look at those things to try to see what we can do. We're also looking to see, like, what other non-monetary things that we can do for staff, you know, if it's different policy things or different available benefits that are available that we can just have them be used in different ways. So we're really trying to go to the drawing board as much as we can. But I hesitate to go into talking too much about what the cuts, just because there are people on staff that are always looking and listening, and I don't want to send up an alarmist, because we've been very careful about saying, hey, look, we're working through this, and I don't want people to freak out. And so again, just trying to be very cautious in terms of how we go forward. That's not where we intend to be. That's not where we want to go. I know that's not where mayor and council want to go. I just don't want people to misinterpret any of the comments that we make to be taken in that particular way.
Okay. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We got some other things that we need to do. Checking in.
Yes, so I guess my question is, the decision that we make today, how does that land with the schedule? Like, because we are making the decision today, and then we're having
Public hearings on the 2nd and the 16th.
Right.
Of September. And so what this does is it helps us to know what that budget looks like. If we've got to go back and make some changes, then we need to know that. Also, it'll help us to know what we're going to need to start gearing up for the upcoming budget year, right? Because if fiscal year 27 is already going to have a shortfall, then we really need to start looking at what all this means. We didn't bring anything to y'all that had any additional staff other than those just things that we talked about where we did like some reclasses. So there were things where people requested staff. We said we're not going to do any of that because we don't want to spend every single penny of the city's money. We want to make sure that we're best positioned. So we're definitely trying to do our part, and staff has given up those opportunities to be able to add the things that they may need. But that's what it does. Councilmember Gata says it just helps us to know if this budget, what tax rate we're building a budget based upon. And so right now, the tax rate that is before you today is the 62.78, because y'all said no new revenue rate, but it doesn't include some of the things that we really know that need to be included in there. And so that's why we were asking for at least a 64.96. And so we want to make sure that the budget includes all the things that it needs to without the shortfall as well that we would be getting into for 27.
Well, the
Does
no
that
new
make sense?
revenue rate is really a cut from 2 years ago, for 2 years' worth of cuts, basically.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because all we're bringing in, we'd just be bringing in the same amount of money, and yes, and it doesn't have any inflationary
Right.
considerations, you're right.
Yeah, we're already in where we've already cut so far. Okay.
And later in this meeting, not in this meeting, but the actual regular session, then council's gonna be asked to set your maximum tax rate, because you have to do that by law. And so that's a rate that we publish. And so y'all are gonna have to do that too. And so, I mean, if you wanted some flexibility and you wanted some wiggle room, you could go wherever you wanted to. If you wanted to go to the 67, like Mr. Gonzalez talked about, that's the maximum that you would go. It doesn't mean you have to go there, but it would give you the flexibility to say that between now and the 16th, that you're gonna vote, you're gonna refine what that number actually is, based on the public hearings and based on any additional information that you would get between now and then.
Right, but what budget are you going to bring back? Because you'll recall, a few years ago, we told staff, okay, we'll set that at a penny higher than what we think it ought to be. And the next thing I know, what we had on our desk was a budget at that rate, and there really wasn't an option for the lower. So
What
what-
I would
yeah, what's gonna
say
happen?
is that this is about, again, being forward-focused. What we would want to do is make sure that at least if council was willing to go up to the 6496, we'll keep the budget like it is right now. Other than those few things, we would just want to prioritize the things that weren't on the list, so that as funding became available, we could do those things. And then y'all would have time between now and then, because it's really focusing on the long term and not being in a deficit. So again, I don't want to go back and say that we're going to just program expenses with every single bit of revenue that y'all do. I want to make sure that we're being mindful of positioning us for that FY '27. So I would say keep it the way that it is, as far as we would do on our end, other than unless there's something that you're saying isn't in the budget right now that you want to see in the budget. And you can set the tax rate at where we need to set the tax rate for that long-term focus.
At the 64.96, we talked about a lot of stuff, but bottom line, what does that do to departmental budgets? You mentioned at one time still being flat. Was that the no new revenue? Or what, on
Correct.
this, the long-term focused rate, our budget's still gonna be flat, which basically is a loss?
Yes, ma'am. It doesn't change the
That's what I
department
thought you had
budgets.
said.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, so, I'm sorry, I'm just like really trying to absorb, like, make sure I'm understanding. This is my page 49, but I think this is what I pulled from the email from Liz, but it's the tax rate scenarios, estimated NNR used in June, that slide. I'm trying to understand like what we're getting, not that, no. I'm trying to understand like what we're getting more drilled down when it comes to 64.96. Yeah, that is like
Yes.
more drilled down, kind of sort of.
Yes, ma'am. And really, all this slide is showing is that 6496 will generate an additional $1.9 million in revenue. It
Over
doesn't,
this year.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
This year. And you can use that $1.9 million to start addressing some of these, when you look at those lower bullet points, these are some commitments that the city has made, Engine 7 staffing, we can begin to start setting money aside for that. We have that expiring federal funding that we know that we're going to have to come up with money for, the citywide software allocated. Those are just some items that 1.9 million can be used to help reduce that shortfall in fiscal year '27 when these expenses start to hit.
And, well, the thing is, those funds that are expiring from the federal side, the citywide software thing, those are things that we need to pay, correct?
Yes.
That's not we're just not going out to dinner tonight kind of thing.
Correct. Yeah, and the citywide software allocation, those are softwares that are being used, citywide by the city on a daily
Yeah,
basis.
that never goes down.
Correct.
Right, I guess my thing is like, I feel sometimes like I'm kind of like trapped into making decisions for some things that I don't have like a better, fuller, more drilled down understanding of things. Like, willing to consider like the suggestion, like the middle bar. But to me, it's like the additional capacity for long-term sustainability, and even that, it just doesn't give me enough information to say that's where that cushion can go towards. Does that make sense? Like, I'm happy to give y'all cushions for, or like, I guess to capture some things, but like even cityware software allocation, like, what do you mean by that? Like, it's $1 million? Because right now, like, I don't even have access to Adobe on this computer. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are you talking about? What software? Like, a lot of the software that I have to use, like even trying to print, is very inefficient. And I'm like, are we in 1999? So to me, it's like, help me, but I only know what I'm exposed to, right? So is it like a GIS? Is it like a system for like account? You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about?
Accounting
so
and
the-
billing and,
Yeah, exactly. So this is software like, the billing software or the accounting software that is used citywide. It benefits all the different funds, whether you're in the electric fund, water, wastewater, or the general fund. Historically, those types of software have been just allocated a third, and a third to the electric, water, wastewater, and general fund. And that puts a disproportionate amount on the utility funds. And that causes utility rates to have to be higher to be able to cover that cost. And so the plan is to slowly move that over to the general fund where it really belongs. But it's so much money that we can't just flip a switch and do it. We have to.
Right. They've been subsidizing, the utilities have been subsidizing the general fund's portion because pro rata, when you look at the number of head counts in the general fund versus in those others, then the number of users and licenses aren't really a third, a third, a third. So this has helped make sure that general fund is carrying their weight. And that's another thing with the legislature that may come out, because there was even contemplated legislation at this last legislative session where they were gonna not allow some of these general fund transfers to happen from utilities. So we're trying to make sure that we're being on the offense, because right now, if they were to come and mandate that, we wouldn't have a choice, and we'd have to find a place to have this come in and be paid from the general fund. So we just need to, again, know the landscape, that what we're working with is not having the local decision-making control, and we've got to figure out how we make sure that we're positioning, knowing all the tea leaves that we're reading and all the different landscapes that we're trying to keep up with. We're trying to make sure that we're giving y'all the best information that we possibly can in terms of trying to have that foresight until they tie your hands, and before they do tie your hands, with not being able to be in control of making those decisions beyond the 2.5% or whatever revenue cap is actually approved.
Right, okay, I guess where I'm at right now is I am willing to go towards like the suggestion, but not necessarily, like, I still think that my leaning towards that at this moment is not like synonymous with like putting that money towards those things specifically without us walking through each of those, right? So me saying yes to that doesn't mean that I think that the
That's where it needs to go.
1.1 million should go to all the expiring federal funding, because I just don't, I don't know, I haven't seen the projects, right? I haven't been able to like see their efficacy or like any reports and stuff, and I just don't know. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if I'm,
yeah, is this to keep them running, or is this to get them paid out and complete the projects?
This would be to continue with those
Okay.
projects.
Oh,
right?
like the cyber.
Yes, ma'am.
But these are the people.
Yeah, well, it's the people and the operational costs
Okay.
both combined.
So
as
I
well
guess
as
that's the part, is we would want to make sure that we separate that out. You know, if
Right,
it's
because-
the positions versus the actual, you know, like,
Well,
Because you named preventive litter, eviction prevention, evoke wellness, new something, I can't even understand my handwriting, but the Red Bull shakes. Yeah, the mental
Mental
health,
health.
emergency services, like, I would like it more drilled down, I think, because I feel like sometimes we're given these broad categories. We want to say yes because, like, in theory, we want to give you all kind of some flexibility on like where to deploy extra money, or like to have it there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm comfortable with those items because I do not know more drill down. And then afterwards, like, well, you said it this one time, and it's like, well, I felt pressured.
Yeah, so why is it 900 next year and then down to 200 the following year?
Because there is that, the federal funding ends in December of '27, which is the first quarter of fiscal year '28. So we're recognizing that there will be some money that will still be in fiscal year '28.
And then after that, it's zero, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
After that, it's zero, correct?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. That's when it is completely gone.
Okay.
I thought it was all, yeah. Yeah, 26 is ARPA funding. We have to have it all done in December of 2026, which would be
that's right,
FY '27, correct? So
Yes.
FY '27, so it may be that transit is the 28. So we can get those numbers
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
But this is, again, with that budget policy, it was go forward with those particular things. And so that's where we went forward with the staffing on that as the capacity. So we will bring those, and if we need to separate those out from the other items, then we can definitely do that, and y'all can tell us you want to continue. But the ones to continue are the PALs, it is the Rio Grande Legal Aid, and some of those that have also been big on,
That are relatively
Helping
new in a
some of
way,
the
but
things, yeah.
it's
yes, ma'am.
much needed.
But we can get you
Okay.
that list. You have the list a little bit there, but I can get you the associated dollar amounts with each one if that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
I think that would be super helpful to me.
Okay.
But can you give me a number today?
Yeah, it's the middle, the recommended, the,
6496?
yes,
I got you
for
down.
now, until I read all the other stuff.
Yeah, we'll get you that list with
Yeah.
the associated costs. We'll get it to all of y'all.
Yeah, and I guess just like the refresher for everything else, so like I know we've had discussions about the, what is it, the Engine 7 staffing. But I think even just like if you could like hyperlink like, where I find the life and the lore of that too, right? I just want to be able to justify in a meaningful way to people when they ask like, okay, so what do you mean Engine 7 staffing? How did y'all get here? What would you do if we stayed at the 62.78? Like, where would you pull that money out of?
Oh,
Stuff
you
like
may have been
that.
out of the room when I asked and Les explained all of that, but he can
Well,
explain it again.
I think he did, but it's one of those things where it's like, because I didn't have time to review, like, information that I have difficult time sometimes fully absorbing things live. Like, it's helpful for me to go
Right.
back and be able to, yeah.
We both agree on that.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Locke, everybody who was a part of putting all of this together. This being my first budget cycle, it was cool to see how it all plays out. You know, I think I personally appreciate the caveats about where the legislature is. Not to sound nihilistic, but just being realistic. And talking with 3 members, those bills are likely to pass this special session. Unless something drastically changes, it's, from what I'm hearing, it's one of those things that if it doesn't pass due to hopefully lack of quorum, it will be something that is continued to be shoved down people's throat. And so I think, you know, to Mr. Gonzalez's point, being realistic about that, being realistic about the fact that this may be the last time we are able to make these types of decisions and the precedent that it sets. So while I was always in the middle, I do appreciate the what did you say, 67?
He said 67.
Yeah, roughly.
He was
66.
looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, zeroing out that 3.6 million, correct?
Yeah, essentially. So I
The
mean,
red.
I basically took the difference between negative 3.6 and positive 1.7, and then the difference between 64.96 and 70.47, and it came out to like 67.01 or something.
So
It's actually
what I
going to be
would-
closer to 68, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I would ask is, you know, we kind of
Based
get
on what
an
you said,
idea on that figure, that middle, that in between, what it would look like, what it would include. I mean, I appreciate Ms. Garza's points about what we do with some of this funding that's ending. But I just think, you know, for the taxpayers, it's about being realistic. And while none of us wish to be dealing with the financial constraints that we're dealing with, and we can thank certain people for that. I do, I appreciate, obviously, as a proponent of the HSAB funding, as a proponent of the community, I appreciate all of that being included already. But not to belabor the point, the 4% is really what I'm interested in that 400,000 additional dollars to make sure our city employees, I think we have 994 total city employees, I might be wrong on that. I want to make sure our people are taken care of, just to put it frank. And so I know we've already done a great job at making sure where we're at, but that $400,000, seeing with that, those minimal increases, whether it's 67, 68, we'll get to that. I'd be interested to see what that could look like without further exacerbating the forecast as far as negative forecast is concerned. And yeah, we'll go from there. I don't know if that gives y'all enough to work with. I guess my question was more so, I know that when we were talking about schedule, this is going to be presented to the Neighborhood Commission tomorrow.
Yes.
And so given, I don't know where we are as far as how many people, I haven't been doing the counting, where we are as far as our rate's concerned. But if there is some interest in flexibility between the two, is that something that could be mentioned in those conversations as to not surprise anybody?
Yes. That's
Okay.
something that we could ask at the Neighborhood Commission to get their feedback. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah, I'd like
Between
to.
the long-term and the voter approved.
And y'all might want to go to page 1671 of the regular meeting, because what I'm always looking at here, we've got the impact on the city, what is the impact on the taxpayer? And that's where it's got the tax rate comparison, your average family home at 457, and the tax rate, the no new revenue versus the long-term focused rate, the 62 and the 64, and the monthly cost difference is $6? Is that correct? It's got to be more than that.
Is that setting the maximum tax rate? Is that the presentation referring to?
Yes.
Not this one, the
Yes.
other one?
And yes.
Mayor,
The
can you
6
give that
o'clock
page
packet.
number real quick again?
1,671. And what it gives is with the no new revenue rate at the average house, the annual tax bill is $1,962. At the 64.90 cents, the average tax bill for the average value home would be $2,030 for a difference of $68. And so the monthly cost difference is $6, if I'm reading this correctly. So that's a $6 a month increase between the no new revenue and the long-term focused.
Yes, ma'am. And when I saw this graph, it made me go back to the previous graph we had in the work session, which we showed if they were to pass that homestead exemption, constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
And so I know the two figures were calculating different averages.
Yes.
Like this one's doing average single-family taxable value.
Right.
But this one does not, the one that the mayor just talked about doesn't account for if that was
Correct.
passed, right? So it
Correct.
could be in
Correct.
addition.
Yes.
So
Yes,
your
ma'am.
total tax bill is, if that passes,
Yeah.
will actually likely go down.
Yeah, and I just want to say, as somebody who is not conservative, but fiscally, I do believe in spending money smartly, or intelligently. I don't take these decisions lightly, but as I said the last time we had this discussion, given the things that we are seeing that the city's going to be investing in, for me, if I'm going to make a decision to raise taxes, I want to make sure that the people can feel it. It's going back to them. If this was us irresponsibly raising it on things that I couldn't care less about and that we didn't need, it'd be a whole different conversation. And so that's sort of why I'm leaning where I'm leaning. I look
Which
forward to
is?
in between 64.96 and 70.47.
I'm sorry.
But we've been talking about a 67, 68. I'm definitely 64.96 as a starting point, but I'd like to see, to account for the additional raise for our city employees. I know everybody's pocketbooks are feeling what's going on right now. Buying power's down, costs are going up, and wages. We've been, from what I'm hearing, y'all have been doing a good job at making sure wages rise, but
So you're between
additional.
this, the middle one and the
voter-
68 that Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez was talking about.
And for the item this evening, setting the maximum tax
Uh-huh.
rate, we can run those numbers and share with council
That's
what the
what I
actual
was gonna
tax rate would
ask.
be.
If
I'd
you could
appreciate
do
that.
that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we see that impact on our average homeowner,
Yeah.
that's really what I'm gonna need.
Okay.
Yeah, they were helpful, and I know, I've been following different cities doing different, Austin, everybody. I know people have desire to see that type of graph for renters. I know it's a little bit difficult to sort of gauge how that would impact renters, but if there's some ability for us to see that as well, I'd be definitely interested in that as well.
Okay.
And, of course, all the things that Ms. Garza mentioned, I'd love to see,
Okay.
so, thank you. I don't know if that
Okay.
answers.
But we do need to make a decision at 6 o'clock, maybe 9, whatever time it's going to be.
So I know it's giving you minimal time.
Yeah.
And so, where I am is when you look at the big picture, and I believe that the school tax exemption will pass. Texas, it's not just up to us here, because the last one passed by, I think, a fair amount. So at the $6 a month impact, which is something, but it's relatively small compared to what happens across the city. And so I would be willing to look at, maybe run one at 67, run one at 68, and see where we are, and then how that compares. Let's add that in, go back to the slide that you've got that talks about if the exemption passes at the state,
Yes.
what this 67, 68 does.
Okay.
We do that?
Yeah.
Okay, then that's where I am, is somewhere between the 64, 96, 68, which I guess really means 68. But we need to see those numbers.
Yes.
Are y'all good with that? To see additional numbers? Yes, ma'am. Oh,
So we all kind of agree.
right now, we've got 3 of us that are willing to look at the 68, and we've got 2 that, well, no, I've got you there. You're willing to go look at the higher rate?
No, I said 64.96.
You're not willing to go any further than that?
I, not right now, no,
Okay.
without any further information.
Okay, then we are at 3 people willing to look higher, and we are at 3 people that want to stick at the 64.96. But those of you that want to say you want to stay at the 64.96, do you want to see these numbers of the 67 and the 68 to see what the impact is on the taxpayer,
I do want to see the numbers, yes.
including the impact if the homestead exemption increase passes, and then we can figure it
Have
out?
that information.
Is that
Right.
good?
To look at it, yes, but for the record, am still focusing
No,
on
I
the
still
64.96.
got you.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, I'm
The-
always down
okay.
to consider different things, but like I said, I have felt in multiple budget work sessions, like pressure to lean one way or another when there's just like very broad categories. And I think for the most part, it's things have fallen into place. It's difficult for me to be able to be more accountable to my constituents when I'm just kind of like reading off this presentation and it's like not a drill down. So even just like a broad idea of
And we
more
could,
drill downs.
we can do that. I mean, one thing that I can tell you, just because of the conversation that we had about EMS, if we get those viable options back and the cost, that's not taken into account any of that in this. So that's one item where we're talking about $1.9 million that we would have extra to do. But that's figuring out even the EMS in those other things that John mentioned, staffing Fire Engine 7. That's making sure that we have money to cover the things that are expiring, from ARPA. So we can give you the drill down list, but that's one that's gonna be at the top of. If I get a study back that tells me to implement something and I have no money to do it, and we don't even have the ability to do taxes, I don't know what we're gonna do, to be honest. We're gonna, without cutting.
Yeah.
So that's just one thing that I can tell you very seriously, is an impact to
Yeah.
what tax rate is chosen.
I think at this point, we're pretty much set. We need a couple more little spreadsheet slides, and
So we don't have conclusive direction on this. It's 3-3. So, but we'll at least look at the 6496.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we go, is at least the 64.
nobody's less than 6496.
Correct. So we'll at least we'll go with that, and then we'll bring back the other numbers for when we go through the maximum tax rate. And then y'all can set
Right.
it from there.
Okay, it is now 5:30, and I know you have a lot more slides here. So council, I'm going to suggest that we not do our executive session, just plan that right now at this moment until after the 6 o'clock meeting, or at the end of the 6 o'clock meeting, and that we continue with Mr. Locke's presentation for now. Is that good with you? Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The good thing is that we have completed the general fund. That is the
Yay.
largest fund and has
Yes,
the
ma'am.
most slides. Oh,
All right, we're going to take a 3-minute break. That is bio break. No chatting with everybody in the lobby, please. Locke, we are ready for you to continue.
So now that we're finished with the general fund, we're just going to cover the other major operating funds and begin with the internal service and special revenue funds. And the first fund is the Information Technology Internal Service Fund. And this is a new fund. Including fiscal year 2025, IT was funded by or within the general fund. The funding mechanism, or how IT is funded, hasn't really changed a lot. Up until this point, all the other funds that receive services from IT contribute their share into the general fund. What this does is it just pulls IT out and it creates a fund of their own, and all of the funds contribute to that fund. And you can see on the screen the amount that each one of the funds will contribute. So the total revenues are a 7.6 million, and you can see how much money each one of the funds will contribute. The general fund contributes the most, $4.7 million, but you could go down through the list and see how much each one of the funds contribute towards IT. Then on the expense side, it's broken out by personnel, operating, and citywide software and equipment. That totals $3 million. And this fund, one of the purposes of the fund is to bring in a little more revenue than expense. And and you can see in this instance, it's about $150,000. The intent of that is so when some of the information technology infrastructure needs to be replaced, whether that's a server or some sort of network switch, that there's some cash there to replace it so that the city doesn't have to issue debt to replace these items that we know are going to need to be replaced every 7 years or so.
Mr. Locke,
Yes, ma'am.
I asked this on the message board, and I'm sorry I didn't understand the answer. We've got personnel in here, and generally, personnel and minimum operating is what our fund balance is for.
Yes, ma'am.
So could you explain to me the answer that I
Yes.
didn't understand?
And this is a new fund, so we haven't had an opportunity to set a fund balance policy for this particular fund. Since it is an internal service fund, it's being supported by all of the funds that you see listed up there. And all of, the majority of those funds, at least those larger ones, we look at the general fund, the water, wastewater, and electric, the amount that they're contributing, they have a fund balance policy to make sure that they're keeping, if it's 25% or whatever the
Right.
percentage is, of that amount. So the amount that is the fund balance required within this fund isn't as high for that reason, because you would almost be double
Because
counting
they're
it.
covered elsewhere?
Yes, ma'am. So just as a matter
Okay.
of practice, you could have a nominal amount, like 3% or something that, here.
That's fine, we can move on.
Okay.
Because we're running out of time.
Okay. And that brings us to the hotel tax fund. If you look at the fiscal year '26, we're estimating to begin with a fund balance of 4.1 million. The total revenues will be 4.7 million. And just as a reminder, the increase in hotel tax was estimated at 5% over fiscal year '25. The reason that is a higher number was due to the Embassy Suite remodel. The actual hotel tax revenues are still lower than the fiscal year '22 actual revenues, so it's still a conservative estimate. The total expenses is 5.6 million, so we'd finished with a fund balance of 3.3 million, which is above the 25% requirement. It's actually a 70% fund balance. And the Community Enhancement Fund, we're estimating to begin with 754,000 fund balance. Total revenues will be 1.3 million and total expenses 1 million. So we would finish with a fund balance of just over $1 million, which is 105% fund balance in that fund. The outlook looks much different in the Community Enhancement Fund now that the 2 compliance officers have been moved out. The forecast did show this fund being in a shortfall, and as you can see, it's not that way now. So that just brings us to a decision point slide, which is really just any direction that you have for staff with those particular funds.
Council, if you have anything, speak quickly. Moving on, Mr. Luck.
Now we're moving into the enterprise funds and beginning with the largest enterprise fund, that's the Electric Utility Fund. We're estimating to begin with a fund balance of just under $33 million. We have budgeted revenues of 85 million and expenses of 84 million. So we'd finish with $33.6 million, which would be 145 days cash on hand. And as we talked about earlier, that's just a little shy of the 150-day cash on hand target that we have for the electric fund. The Citizens Utility Advisory Board recommendation for rate adjustment in the electric fund is a 4.4% effective rate adjustment. At that level, that would bring our debt service coverage that we've talked about in the past to at least at 1.2, which is that legal minimum required. It would put us at 1.22. As a reminder, our electric utility was downgraded in September of '22 from a A- to a BBB+. And as you can see by the chart, that's just 2 ratings above junk bond status. In September '23, it was re-rated, and S&P affirmed that BBB rating, and with a stable outlook, which was good, so they weren't at that time looking at downgrading us any further. So with those proposed rate adjustments, you can see that for the average, or for a residential customer, that we'd still have the lowest across our peer cities. You can see the list of the cities on the screen. Looking at on the commercial side, it's the same case. We would still have the lowest rate across all of the peer cities. This is just the electric utility rate history. There actually have been no rate increases in the electric utility rate for 6 of the last 10 years. And just an update on the late penalty revenue. That was not a source of revenue in the rate model. The estimated impact was a 0.6% increase to offset that budgeted revenue that has been there in the past. And the estimated budgeted revenue loss is $690,000 in the electric fund. These are some of the major cost drivers in the electric fund. The 3% increase is $280,000. There's a new electrical engineering design supervisor included in the proposed budget. There's a new upgrading the customer software for utility billing that will address some of the issues that we've been experiencing with our customers is $235,000. Professional services has increased by $350,000, and that is for a pole attachment survey. That is all the communication devices that are attached to the electric poles. There's a survey done to make sure that we're aware, like for all the cable company attachments, that we're billing them correctly. And then the FY '26 CIP debt service payment is $326,000. So that brings us to the decision points. The recommendation from QAB was a 4.4% effective rate adjustment, and this would be, any rate adjustment would be included at the September 2nd meeting as a public hearing item.
Are you asking us now if we're generally in agreement with a 4.4% increase?
Yes, Mayor.
Council?
Mayor, since we don't have to go out and disconnect services anymore like in the past, didn't we save a lot of money in the electrical part doing that?
Are you talking about the automated meters and stuff?
Right.
Yeah, we've had that full discussion about the disconnects and all the other stuff. So
Did we
that's,
save it? Do you remember if we saved any? By going that way?
I can't speak to that. I would
We'll
have
need,
to.
we'll need Mr. York to speak to that unless Mr. Henry's going to speak to it, because I know
Or-
Mr. Henry's in here.
Or utility payments, somebody.
No, it'd be, here's
Okay.
Tyler's right here.
Tyler Yorth, the Director of Utilities. I'm not quite sure how to answer the question. So if the question is, did we ever realize any savings by being able to do remote disconnects?
Right, since you didn't have to go to the homes and
Sure,
stuff.
at some point along the way, remember, by the way, we've had that system now for 10 years, right? So at some point along the way, did we not have to hire that additional meter technician or something like that as the system grew or whatever? Yes. Can you go back in a budget line item and go, oh, look, here's the step change down because we did that. Here's where that expense went away. You're not going to find that.
Okay.
So not trying to be cryptic, but I'm just being honest in that what you saw was a net change in that you didn't have to do those other things, but you're not going to go back and go, oh, there it is, 2017, here's where we saved $187,000. You're not going to see it that way.
Plus, it's
Yeah.
been 10 years, so
Okay.
it's
I
not like
was
it's
just-
going to affect this upcoming year.
Right, right.
Okay,
I have a quick
you
question.
go right ahead.
The customer software for utility billing, is that what like the people log into?
Yes, that's that customer interface.
I hate that. I think it is the most inefficient. I'm so serious. Like, I mean, you look up utilities on Facebook and you see like on the community post, it is not user-friendly. And I've named that and I've sent screenshots and screen recording grabs of neighbors trying to navigate that. So I just wanted to name that. Like, at what point are we gonna look into that? Or like, do people have to?
That's what that money is for. It is to upgrade that and to replace that current interface.
Jesus took the wheel. Thank you.
There we go.
Like replace it, right? Not-
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an upgrade through the same company.
No,
But
pues.
it would be a completely different feel and interface from what you experience today.
Okay, I just beg that you guys go play around with it first, like if you're paying your bills. Okay, and then I guess my other question is, well, actually, I don't have another question. Are we giving feedback right now? Like,
On the
not me?
4.4, and it's 547, so, you're a no?
No, I said not it. Y'all can go first.
Oh, okay. Ms. Rodriguez.
But I'm probably gonna be a no.
Mr. Hjort, I know we haven't had a rate increase in 6 of the last 10 years. Remind me, and you said this at the last meeting, if this one is approved, the next one would come 3 years from now? Or do we have an idea?
I don't think it's 3 years from now. So we have had, what, 4 increases in the last 10 years. Last year was a 5% effective. This is a 4.4. One of the next years is 2.2 or 3, and then, yes, there's a 0 out there. I don't remember if it's FY '27 or FY '28.
Okay. I just want to understand for the public, what's the expectation of rate increases?
So what mayor and council have given us direction in the past is to do slow as you go. Because there was a time, and I can recall during my tenure, when we didn't do increases, and then we were at a point where we had no choice, and it had to be 20%.
Yeah.
And so that's the philosophy that we've managed under, and we haven't received different direction to do that. So that's what we've always operated under, is trying to do the slow as you go and make sure that we're keeping up with, and, you know, we're trying to get to the times coverage and all that,
Yeah,
and we
that's
haven't
what
even
drove this
gotten
one.
up to that.
Yeah, when we looked at that, and you guys made that commitment last year that we were gonna fix the financial situation, get our bond rating heading in the right direction, you know, to get there, you know, you need that 4.4 to be able to get over that 1.2 that's the legal minimum requirement, so.
But like you said, we do see it decreasing.
We do, yes,
Okay.
we don't see,
Okay.
it's not 4.4 effective forever out into the future.
The increase will be decreasing.
Yeah, that's what I got. Okay, I'm okay with it.
Your yes, okay. Mr. Gonzalez, on my right?
Let me think about it for a minute.
Okay, Mr. Gonzalez on my left.
So I actually had a question. I know we previously directed y'all not to include late penalties as part of the revenue. Off the top of your head, do you remember what percentage of that late penalties was? So essentially, what percentage of the calculation did we remove? And how did that compare to the 4.4?
That was actually in this slide right here. So it was about $690,000, and so it's 0.6% of that overall increase was to make up for the late fees not being budgeted.
I mean, and that's the thing to consider, is that what I've always heard from mayor and council is, if we're gonna support this, we've gotta make sure we're not doing late penalties, also making sure utility payment assistance programs, and we've done those things. So that's what makes it a little bit difficult to be at this place right at this particular time, is that even with those changes, we knew those were gonna be rate impacts. So we can't do both
Right.
without having that impact.
So, Mayor, to answer the question, yes, I'm fine with it. And I think we may have asked this before, and I don't remember. Obviously, the goal is that we not have customers having to pay late penalties. But assuming that doesn't change and the penalties are still paid and we're still getting roughly $690,000 a year in penalties, where does that money go? Like,
That is, we have a fund balance policy within the fund, and anything that is in excess of that fund balance policy goes to pay cash fund capital projects or equipment purchases.
And really, I mean, that's something that also would be a consideration in your times coverage, and it also would be a consideration for any future rate increases that we would need. So if we're coming out better than expected, then all of that information goes into making that decision about what gets recommended in the future.
Also be mindful that during the last workshop, y'all recommended that we decrease the late fee penalty from 10% to 5%.
Sure.
Right.
So that revenue's not gonna be $690 anyway, even if all of those same late fee transactions happened.
right.
You've cut the number in half, right? So, yes, will still be some revenue recognized through late fees and reconnect fees, but it's no longer gonna be the $690.
Right, okay. So, to City Manager Reyes's point, I have been very resistant to anything related to increases in this realm because of my concerns with things like utility assistance and all of that, late penalties. I do want to say I appreciate the strides that y'all made and the clarity that you guys gave on where those monies go and how you guys distribute them. So yeah, I'm fine with the 4.4 whenever I wanted other people to go. It's because I feel like sometimes my colleagues have some good hot takes that like move me one way or another, or like help me reach my decision. So I just wanted to say like, generally, yeah, 4.4. Unless
Okay.
somebody has a super GT hot take, that's gonna change my mind.
Mr. Mendoza.
I want to say thank you to the QAB board. They spent 2 meetings, about 2.5 hours apiece on this, and it was not an easy job. Fortunately, they had left here. To the point of, we're doing this slow and steady. I have to continue this because I'd hate to see that 20% markup or 10% markup. So I'm in favor of the 4.4.
Okay. And yes, thank you to all QAB members. I'm okay with the 4.4. Mr. Gonzalez?
I'm okay with it, Mayor.
Okay. Moving on.
The next fund is the Water Wastewater Utility Fund. And looking at the fiscal year 2026, we're estimating the beginning fund balance to be just under $33 million. The total revenues will be $77 million and expenses $76 million. So we would finish with an estimated $33.8 million, which is 162 days of cash on hand. The fund balance reserve requirement for this fund is 150 days. These QAB recommendations for this fund is a 10.4% effective rate increase. And that is composed of, it's broken down with water being 10.8 and wastewater being 9.4. That works out to being a 10.4. That rate also puts us at a debt service coverage of 1.2, which is meeting the legal minimum that we need to within the fund. Looking at the water wastewater bond rating, it has a much higher bond rating. In 2023, it was upgraded from a AA- to a AA, which is the same strong rating that we have with our tax pledge. So that's a really strong rating. In April of 25, that rating was affirmed as a AA rating. And the reason that is important, of course, is it saves a lot of money with interest when you issue bonds. This is what the impact is for residential, the average residential household that uses 5,000 gallons. You can see where San Marcos is currently compared to our peer cities and where San Marcos would be after the proposed rate adjustment. And there is a slide coming up here that has a summary of all these adjustments, so you can see the impact to the total utility bill. This is a look at a commercial user, where it is currently and where it will be after the proposed adjustment compared to our peer cities. This is the,
Hold on a second. For folks who are arriving now, we're still in our 3 o'clock workshop, and our 6 o'clock meeting will not be starting at 6 o'clock. Thank you. It's going to be starting late. At this point, I don't know how late. So if you think you're late, you're not. You're really early for 6 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Locke. Please go ahead.
this is just the water wastewater utility rate history adjustment. And you see a block around FY23. That is the only year where there hasn't needed to be an increase in rates for the water wastewater fund. In terms of the late penalty revenue, they have not been included as a revenue source in the model. The water wastewater rate was estimated to have increased by 0.9% to offset the estimated revenue loss, which was $675,000. And as Mr. York pointed out, where the late fees were cut in half, you could cut that in half as well. Looking at the major increases, and personnel, the 3% increase is $250,000. You can see the major cost drivers are in operating. The contract with the Alliance Regional Water Authority will increase by $250,000. The surface water treatment plant contract will increase by $242,000. And the wastewater treatment plant contract, which has just recently been bid out, will increase by $700,000. One of the largest increase in the fund is the debt service payment. That says 4.9K. That should say 4.9M. That's $4.9 million that the
yeah.
debt service is going to increase in fiscal year '26 compared to fiscal year '25. The biggest piece of that is the new ARWA debt that was issued. That's $2.5 million of debt service. That's the biggest part of that.
That's the Alliance Regional Water Authority?
Yes, ma'am, the Alliance Regional Water Authority, yes. So that brings us to the Water Wastewater Fund decision points, and the recommended rate adjustment was the 10.4% effective rate adjustment.
Okay, council, I'll be asking you, it's two questions, water and wastewater. So you can say yes, yes, if you wish, and I'll need somebody to jump in, be first. Yes,
So,
ma'am.
Mr. Locke, did I hear you correctly when we talked about the proposed debt service coverage and the legal minimum that we're supposed to have? Did I hear you correctly to say that without this increase at this specific amount, we wouldn't meet those minimums?
Correct. This increase gets us to 1.2, and that is the legal minimum.
Okay. And then I guess my next question would be in conjunction with what I asked earlier, because I'm seeing a 5% routine increase since FY17. What does next fiscal year look like? What is the is this going to be a trend of those significant increases year after year?
I think Mr. York.
Yeah, I'd like to address that one. Ms. Reyes earlier in electric spoke about the slow as you go. And if you looked at the rate modeling from last year where we had the 5% and 5%, and then this year was anticipated to be a 7.5%, we're coming back to you with nearly a 3-point increase on that. And it's in that debt service that we've got coming on. Two things that happened to us last year. One was, of course, losing 0.9% of that, like almost 1% of the 3% was in the late fee discussion, which we did not have in the rate model last year because those decisions were made after. The second piece of that, though, was in our Alliance Regional Water. We had to take on an additional $17 million of debt last December. We came back to council. There's some problems with the water quality coming out of the wells with some additional iron in it. To fix that and address it, to make sure that we get our allocation of water out of that project, we had to invest another $17 million in it. That's the $2 million that Mr. Locke referenced in unanticipated debt service. Well, that's another 2.5%. So literally you can get to the 3% difference in slow as you go, 5, 5, 5, 7.5, and then it drops back down after that. But this year we had those two unanticipated cost increasers that we just need to address to meet legal requirements.
I appreciate that information. Well, given the context and everything that's been said, then yes, while it's a tough, high increase, and let's not address that, it makes sense. So seems like, yeah, I'm okay with it.
Mr. Gonzalez?
It seems like water's getting more expensive every single year and pretty costly. No, I'm not okay with it, Mayor.
That's water.
No.
And then there's no? Ms. Garza?
It seems like we kind of don't really have a choice. But again, I think my rationale is we have invested quite a bit of money, in like our Human Services Advisory Board and all these assistance programs. And I just want to say I really encourage all those smaller nonprofits who give out these type of assistance to pay, for our neighbors to pay their bills, to continue to apply for those. But I'm going to be a yes on both.
Yeah.
For right now, just given the context and the deal pickle we're in.
Yeah. And Mr. Gonzalez, the reason water is going up is we have another source of water, so we can have water, and it's not free.
Yeah, well, what happened to the reclaimed water we're supposed to sell back and make some money off of that? Is that working out for the city?
I couldn't begin to tell
I mean,
you
we put a
that-
lot of money in that as well.
Yeah,
I'll
don't fuss
just-
at me.
I know.
I don't know the dollar value of that annually. I'm sure we can bring that back for you next time. I can tell you in terms of gallons of sales, we sell 500,000 gallons a year. 500,000 gallons a day to Hayes Energy, somewhere in the 300,000 gallons a day to the used to be Martin Marietta concrete plant down on Hunter Road is now
Right.
Ash Grove. And Kissing Tree is a couple 100,000 gallons of reclaim that we sell to the golf course. So yes, we're selling and we're recovering those revenues. And we are, continually advertising that we have reclaimed available for any new people we can get interested in using.
And somewhere down the line, maybe I misunderstood, that reclaimed water is drinkable water?
Dr. Ikehata tends to drink it. I would not recommend that you tend to drink it. In my professional capacity, I'm going to tell you, it's type 1 water, which is this far away from potable, but it's not potable.
That's the person who did that pilot?
Correct.
Still
Professor
doing
at
the
the
pilot.
university.
He's
Oh,
a
there's-
Texas State professor, still doing the pilot out there. And if you take a tour of the plant, you get to the end of the tour, and he will
Yes.
take a glass of the reclaimed water and
In the
drink it.
future, can you give me like a little update on that?
But my answer to your question has
Yes.
to be
I drank
professionally,
some.
it's not, it's not
Okay.
potable.
And the other thing is that not only do we sell the reclaimed water that Mr. York talked about, but we also sell some of our water to County Line. We sell
To
some.
Buda and to Kyle.
And to Buda and to Kyle.
Right, maybe we ought to raise their rates
Yeah.
instead of ours.
Kyle had something like a 22% increase
Wow.
this year.
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
like
In
5
June.
minutes ago.
I just talked to
But-
their city manager, and yeah, he said there was about a 20-something% increase that he was asking.
Yeah.
And
for.
my understanding was our well water's only, we use 20% of it?
Less than
Edwards
that.
Water?
Yeah.
Our well water?
Yeah, our Edwards wells produce a little over 20% of our total usage each year now. Most of it comes from Canyon Lake.
That's terrible
through-
water, yeah.
Through GBRA and comes to our city surface water treatment plant out on Highway 21
Right,
and serves roughly 80%. And then, of course, we had Alliance Regional Water that came on. That water supply came on in July, and we're getting 2 million gallons a day of clean water from them.
and the well water that we get from our wells, that's mixed with the other water, or?
There's some blending in the system, yeah. When we pull it out, it gets chlorinated at the point that we extract it and put it in the tank. But the system pressures drive the water through the system, and yeah, there's some commingling that goes on.
Right. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm a yes. Mr. Mendoza
Yes, yes.
and Mr. Lorenzo Gonzalez.
Yes, but can you go back? I think it's just one slide. So, and I asked Ms. Reyes this, but just to,
That's a new
Let-
position. I'm sorry, I didn't know which one you were talking. So it's this one? This is a new position, correct? The new wastewater supervisor? Yes, sir. Sorry.
I just wanted clarification on that, but either way, my yes.
All right. Then we have 5 yeses, and we'll continue on.
Okay.
And that would be excellent on America's Got Talent.
So that takes us to our stormwater utility fund. We're estimating to begin with a fund balance of $3 million. The budgeted estimated revenues are just under $10 million. The expenses are 10.3. The expenses are exceeding because of a one-time expense. You can see there of $490,000. We'll finish with a fund balance of 2.7, which is 100 days of cash on hand, and the fund balance reserve requirement is 90 days. So there's no proposed rate adjustment in this fund. That takes us to resource recovery, and the beginning fund balance is $3.7 million. The revenues are estimated to be 8.7, and the expenses 8.3. So we'd finish with a $4.1 million fund balance, which is 178 days of cash on hand. The requirement for this fund is 90 days, and that's just about $2.1 million. And the excess balance is what is being set aside for a future resource recovery facility. And there is a 1% increase included in for this fund. This was doing that incremental increase. The refuse hauler did not have an increase in their contract for fiscal year 26. So this will help address and reduce any future increases is the reason that it's included as a 1%. There is my apologies. This is the resource recovery rate history. And so you can see the increases that have been within the resource recovery rate fund over the years. And this is a summary of all of the utility bill proposed adjustments. You can see for each one of the funds what the current fiscal year 24-25 monthly rate would be for the average user, and then what the proposed rate would be in fiscal year 25-26, and then what the monthly dollar change would be. So as you look down through there, for instance, the electric was $5.06 more for the average user. In total, it would be $16 which is a combined increase of 6% across all of the utility funds.
We needed to make a decision on the 1%, please, sir.
It's coming up, or
Okay.
if city council would like to do it now, we could do it right now.
We just talked about it. Let's just do
Okay.
that now.
Yeah.
Council, the 1% for resource recovery, looking for a yes or a no?
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes.
Yes.
Yes, and yes. Okay, thank you. Please continue.
That brings us to airport fund. The estimated beginning fund balance will be $138,000. The budgeted revenues are $937,000 and expenses $882,000. So we would finish with the ending fund balance of $192,000 at the airport. And the final fund is our transit fund. We're estimating the beginning fund balance to be $693,000. The revenues are $4.7 million, and expenses $4.8 million. You see a one-time expense in there of 1.9. 1.8 of that is from a grant that the city's receiving for transit vehicles. The remainder of that is for the triennial review study to prepare for the audit. So we would finish with an ending fund balance of $543,000, which is 67 days of cash on hand, and so we would meet our fund balance requirement in the transit fund.
Mr. Locke, real quick, because I put a question in the message board about that 1.9. The 1.8 that you're talking about, is that a reimbursement grant, or? I guess if it's a grant, and excuse my ignorance, why are we listing it as an expenditure?
There's also, the revenue is included on the revenue side.
I see, okay.
So it's a net zero
Okay,
transaction. Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
And that brings us to the enterprise fund decision points, which is just other directions for staff. And I'm glad we did ask about the 1% because it's not on there.
Council, anything else? I think we pretty much hashed all this out. Okay. Next steps.
Yeah, this is just the final slide. It's just opportunities for community input. We mentioned tomorrow, August 20th, there'll be a presentation at the Neighborhood Commission. And then there'll be 2 budget public hearings on September 2nd and 16th, 2 tax rate public hearings on those same days. Any of these proposed utility fee increases will also have a public hearing on September 2nd. And September 16th is when City Council will consider the budget and tax rate adoption.
Cool.
Okay. Does this conclude your presentation?
Thank you so
That
much.
concludes my presentation.
Yes. Thanks to you, your staff, for an excellent presentation. Thanks to all the directors and employees who have participated in the budget meetings that probably were not much fun. But we
Right,
thank you
I
for
know.
what you're doing in your departments and for hanging in there.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's hurting everybody.
And thank you, Mr. Locke, for like the visuals and breaking things down for us. I've had to sit through the county's budget process this year. And all I can say is I'm so proud to be able to cite what I think are really good practices And I appreciate that we're moving forward to even more participatory budgeting, so.
Tricia and her team, the budget manager, do a great job with those. Yes, they do.
They're doing great.
Mr. Lott, we don't acknowledge y'all very often, but I always tell my city manager that I do appreciate every one of y'all for doing y'all's job, and, thank you very much for that. And doing a great job at it as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I will say, not even the state is as comprehensive as y'all are, so it's much appreciated.
It is, yeah. Okay, so at this point, the next item is executive session. We do need to read that, but we will not be going into executive session now. For those of you who might be interested, we also always post it on our 6 o'clock agenda, so we will be doing it then, but let's read it and go from there.
The city council will convene an executive session pursuant to section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code Personnel Matters to discuss and provide annual appointee evaluations to 1, the city manager, 2, the municipal court judge, 3, the city attorney, and 4, the city clerk.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is question and answer session with press and public. We have Mr. Maxfield Baker, and he's not online anymore. I have a Jordan Moser. Is Jordan Moser here? If not, that concludes our question and answer with the press and public. There being no further items on this agenda, I will adjourn us at 6:13. For those of you who are here for the 6 o'clock meeting,